Good evening. I want to welcome everyone to the City of Opa-locka virtual COVID-19 workshop. We called this workshop in response to COVID-19 to start to coordinate and give opportunity for the public and the commission and staff to come together to address the day-to-day changes that happen with COVID-19 and discuss our city's response to it. So I want to thank everyone for joining us and being with us today. We're going to start off with the invocation. Commissioner Bass, could you lead us in the invocation?
Father, we thank you for waking us up this morning. We thank you, Lord God, for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. We thank you, Lord God, for your grace that is sufficient. We thank you for our residents. We thank you, Lord God, for providing for us. We thank you, Lord God, that we know at the end of the day, Lord God, that you know what's best for us. We give you honor and glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, Chief, could you lead us in Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, I didn't see the roll call on here and I went over it. Well, could we do a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Bass?
I'm here.
Commissioner Burke?
Here.
Vice Mayor Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Present.
Mayor Pygott?
I'm here. And Madam Attorney, could you state for the record the protocols that govern this meeting?
Sure. Pursuant to Executive Order number on March 20th, 2020, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location and utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.545B2 of the Florida statutes. The members of the City Commission appearing remotely for this meeting are Vice Mayor Davis, Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Burke, Commissioner Kelly, and Mayor Pygott.
Thank you very much. Moving on to public input. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have one.
Okay. You can proceed.
Okay. This public comment reads as follows. Audrey Dominguez, 1147 Jan Avenue. I am happy to see that the city has brought in a center for the residents to be checked for COVID-19 with the help from Miami-Dade County. I have also received calls from the mayor informing regarding this center. I would like to know now that Hip Rockstar is in charge of informing the residents of COVID-19 with information via media, social media, email, and calls, are they going to inform the residents in a different language? Not once did the mayor, city manager, or commissioners mention to put this information in Spanish or Creole. Not once did any of the city officials ask about diversity in the city. Let me remind you that 51.50% residents are Black and 44% are Hispanics. 9% are from other countries. This is a diverse community. Did you ever wonder why the COVID-19 site is empty most of the time? Well, if you only call in English and not in Spanish or Creole, the residents will not understand why you are calling because they do not understand. I took the liberty to inform my neighbors and friends regarding the site. Had received calls asking me, do I know what is going on at Shabandi Park? Let me remind you that election time comes by really quick. 2 years is here, November 2020, and 2022 will be right around the corner. Those who sought the Hispanic and Haitian vote will be looking for it again. But I hope you know they remember, especially since nothing has been done for them. Thank you. That concludes the public comment, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. As always, Madam Clerk, could you go over the rules? How people can actually submit public comments. We want to make sure that people are able to join in and submit their public comments and be a part of this conversation.
Okay, yes, Mr. Mayor. So for all commission meetings, whether it's workshops, special meetings, regular commission meetings that are being done virtual for the time being, the public has an opportunity to submit their comment ahead of the meeting via email to publiccomments@opalocka.fl.gov. Comments submitted by members of the public by email will be read into the record during the meeting as long as they provide the comments by the deadline, which is 2 hours prior to the scheduled meeting time. Comments received after the deadline will be kept for the record, but will not be read during the meeting. And this information is always sent out via email and posted on the city's website as well, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manager, could you address the concern about translating our literature and information into the various languages to reflect the diversity of our community?
Yes. First, the comment was a very proactive one. The city is working on with our media advisor in regards to translating communications in Spanish and Creole. The PR push just started a week ago. So we are in the midst of getting that taken care of, and we do take these comments to heart. And we will try harder in trying to reach those diverse groups within the city of Opa-locka.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I want to make sure we do and ensure that all the literature that's posted on social media and also those robocalls. I know my Spanish isn't up to par to be trying to translate in Spanish. So I'll try my best if I'm presented it, but we may need to get someone to make sure that those calls go out in Spanish and Creole if possible, so that we can address all of the people within the city of Opa-locka. So thank you very much for bringing that up and ensuring that that happens within the city. So moving on to our discussion items. Mr. Manager, you have a presentation to present?
Yes, may I have the screen?
Yes.
Close this out, share screen. Where are we at? Show all windows. Here we go, share. And let's do presentation mode. All right. So the first part of the agenda is discussing Parks and Recs. I asked Mr. Brown to kind of speak on that, give an introduction, and I'll go through the presentation. Mr. Brown.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissions. This presentation has been a collaborative effort with Team Up with Bound and Parks and Recreation Department. You will see a slide on our daily activities and our daily day of progress with our kids in our community. The first slide you see is our Park and Recreation Department, our hours of operation. The second slide is our interest into the facility. We want to have two interests into Shabani Village and Seeger Park as well. Because of the COVID situation that we have right now, we will have one group will be coming into the main entrance of Shabani, and we'll have another group coming into the second entrance, which is our gymnasium door. And the reason for that is once we divide the kids up and put them into their actual groups, we will be able to have them go to the nearest entrance and exit at all times to eliminate the cross-reference of our kids. As you can see in the other slide, you will see our setup and how we're going to set up for the summer program. In our multi-purpose room, we have an anticipated number of 12 youth that's going to be in that facility, that area all day. In our gymnasium area, we have a number of 14 youth that's going to be in the gymnasium all day. We also have a number of 4 youth that would be in the computer lab and a number of 6 youth in our open space. These locations are on the second floor of Shabundy Park. Siegel Park. Siegel Park would also have an interest of 2 locations. Our main location would be our main front door, and then we would do a side door entrance for the other entrance of our kids. And like I stated before, that would be to separate the kids so it won't be a cross reference when they come inside the facility. In the first floor of Siegel Park, we had a setup for 10 youth, and that would be on the first floor called our multi-purpose room. On the second floor, we have a setup for 12 youth because it's a little larger than the first floor. And the park guidelines, these are the guidelines that I met with Team Up with Bound that I thought would be the best interest for both parties. The auditorium use for Shabundy Park is only for emergency purposes only. And the reason why I say that, we have situations with our air conditioner, we're not functioning at 100% most of the time. So at any time that there's a problem in any location where our air conditioning units run out, we can always move one of the groups into the auditorium and continue the process of the programming. Will be no field trips or no table games permitted. Office space will be designated for sickness only. We will take one of our offices upstairs and set up as a location for if a child gets sick. We'll have all the needed necessary equipment for that child until a parent comes to pick that child up. Lunch and snacks will be served in the designated area. The kids will not come and receive lunch in one particular area. Will be delivered to the kids in that area that they're destined to be in. The restroom break will be no more than 2 youth at a time with supervision. Sanitizing break every hour, staff and youth hand wash for the first week so we can stay on top of the virus situation in the facility. And that's very important. We don't know how this is going to pan out. We're in uncharted waters right now, so it's going to be a wait and see as we go. Hopefully we can get through this with no problems. Now the virtual learning, I think it's going to be one of the best things that we could have done in reference to our community in the neighborhood, because what we want to do with the virtual learning process, we want to reach out to the kids who do not attend the summer camp, who does have the capability of having a PlayStation or a wireless computer set up at their home so they can come have virtual learning within the city parks program itself. They can play and compete with their PlayStation with kids that's in this summer camp. They can do exercise. They can actually participate in the summer camp at home. The only problem is we know all kids don't have the necessary equipment to participate, but some kids do. So this will be a great outreach program for us in the upcoming summer camp this summer, reaching out to the kids who are not physically here, but are here through our program and our virtual learning. We subscribe to several virtual learning programs. We've also subscribed to YouTube, which will give us on-site programs to transform to our kids that they can do it at the summer camp, and they also can do it at home. So they will have the process of participating at home as well. Come in, we will give them an application to fill out for the kids that are not in summer camp. We would also afford them the opportunity to participate in our daily activities as well for the ones that do have the necessary equipment. We plan on having a television and a PlayStation in 3 locations at all times, so the kids do not have to move around again. And I think through the course of doing this would eliminate the possibility of not having any sickness or any diseases transmitted throughout the facility itself.
Okay, that concludes the Parks and Recs portion of the presentation. Are there any questions in regards to Parks and Recreation as far as the presentation or anything in general?
Mayor Paget?
Yes.
if I may.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have 4 questions, but you don't have to answer them all right now for the sake of time. My first question would be, how many campers are you anticipating? The second one, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I'm sorry. At Shabundi Park, we anticipating 46 kids, and at Siegel Park, 22 kids.
Okay. And what's your anticipated starting date?
That would be up to the commissions and the
Okay.
mayor.
All right. The third one, quickly, your hours of operation during the day?
It's 8 a.m. and closing time at 4 p.m.
8 to 4. And masks, will masks be mandatory part of the program?
Yes, Team Mobile Bound will provide a certified teacher, which would be doing the educational component.
No, I'm speaking about the mask. Would that be a mandatory part of the summer camp?
I would have to talk to Team Up with Bound on that. They would have the curriculum for that, but I'm quite sure math will be a part of it.
Mr.
Okay,
Brown,
you're misunderstanding me.
Mr. Brown,
Facial
Yes.
Commissioner Bass is asking, will mask be mandatory for
Oh,
the
I thought you said math. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, staff will be wearing masks. I thought you were talking about math and the educational component.
That's okay. The campers also presume that they will be also, right?
That hasn't been decided on for us, the campers. I know we've made a decision between the park and Team Up with Bound that staff will be wearing masks. If it's something that the commissioners want us to pursue, we definitely can do that.
I think that was something that we would really need to consider, because I just got through viewing the new update that there are potential rise in this deaths and everything else coming up shortly. So I think the facial coverings will be more than appropriate. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think that's a problem. We definitely can do that.
Any other Mary, I'm sorry, you have the floor.
Any other discussions, questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Vice Mayor Davis.
through the mayor, to the manager or Mr. Brown, whoever's suited better to answer the question. What's the maximum capacity for Shabundi Village? And I guess the same question goes for the rest of our park facilities.
Well, let me just give you the numbers and per location, and I guess we can tally it up. In the auditorium room, we have a capacity of 435 seating. In the multi-purpose room, it's 126. In the gymnasium, seating wise, I don't have that actual number, but it's easily 300 participants in the gymnasium. So when you go to the second floor in the computer lab, the seating capacity is 35, and the open space area is about 15. Our fitness facility, we have a seating capacity of 75. So all in all, I think we're around about, maybe in the facility itself, maybe 500, about 700 participants.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Manager.
So, Vice Mayor, you're asking for camp participants, not just like the total capacity in the building. You want to know about camp?
Not really necessarily related to camp participants, but I just wanted to get a general idea of what numbers we were looking at for each building. I know how the county has pretty much set forth guidelines to have us operate at 50%, 25%, but that's based on a maximum capacity that is usually outlined by the fire marshal, whoever. Yeah, so I'm more speaking to that number for our park facilities. Like, what is that? I guess that total capacity for each space, or kind of how Mr. Brown explained it. He kind of did it by rooms, or I don't know, like, I guess what structure we're following. but can he speak more to, I guess, the capacity? I just want to know, like, are we operating at 25%, 50%, that sort of thing? That's my reasoning behind the question.
Well, Mayor, Vice Mayor, if you're talking about capacity, I would say about 10% of the number of kids that we're going to have in the camp related to our capacity of seating.
Okay, thank you. That's what I gathered from your remarks. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
hello?
Yes, Commissioner Kelly, you have the floor.
I can barely hear anybody. I just text Mr. Nelson because I can't hardly hear anybody's comments or anything from the beginning. So I don't know if it's my laptop or whatever, but I can hardly hear anything. So I apologize if I ask the same question somebody's already asked, because it's very difficult for me to hear everything that's been said, including yourself. If I can go back to the beginning, I think Mr. Brown said that the number of kids that would be involved at Shabandi would be, I think he said 40, I believe.
46, Vice.
46 kids. And at Siegel would be 20.
22.
22. Okay, and I see the breakdown of how you have coming in and basically split up in the rooms, the gym, et cetera. How are you going to determine which kids get in the program? How's the sign-up process going to be?
Well, we normally do first come, first serve in our community. We always have a base of kids that's always been faithfully coming to summer camp years and years, and they're calling now. So it's first come, first serve. Fill out the application. Once those slots are filled up, that's it. But we would also offer the ones who don't get a slot the opportunity to participate at home if they have the necessary equipment that they need to do that. So, because everything actually would be virtual learning and competition in summer camp this year. So it won't be field trips and things of that nature.
Okay, because I'm very concerned because we're only going to have 68 slots total for kids that have been shut up for the whole last 3 months. So I'm very interested to see how that registration takes place. You also mentioned about programming, et cetera, and for kids that would have the capacity for internet or what have you. And I know a lot of schools, they're turning in their equipment over the next week or two, so I'm not sure how that's going to work with some kids. But could you speak to the type of program that you're going to have, since it's going to be indoors, particularly to virtual first, and then any activities or programs that you're planning on doing in the buildings themselves?
Okay, some of the programs that we're going to be doing with the virtual will be like field trips. We will have field trips to the zoo, basic field trips that they normally would go to. We would be doing it online. YouTube has a wealth of field trips that kids can actually take, and the facilities that we go to on the YouTube would actually relate that back into our kids, so they will have an opportunity to explore like this jungle safari, things of that nature. For us, the exercise component of the summer camp programs, we would be logging on to different sites where the kids can, where they're sitting and stationed, can actually do their physical exercises through that. We also have, instead of going outside and have the competition of games, they can do it on PlayStation, playing, I guess, the 2000 basketball, football, NFL, Madden, things of that nature, in which we can compete also with the kids that are at home. So we'll have a registration base and come up with some type of system with IT that we can reach out to those kids that can play the kids that's home and play the kids that's at our summer camp. So we're working on a wealth of things with team up with Bound Through the Children Trust. They have a very great curriculum. So we're still putting those things in place as we speak now.
Okay, I was looking at your breakdown. For example, Shabanda, 12, 14, 4, and 6. That doesn't add up to 46. So where's that other 10 would be? Where would they be at?
Let me look at my,
Unless I'm not adding
my
the,
numbers.
my math may not be good.
26, 30, 36. We're missing our fitness area, which that's the balance. You will see the numbers in the report, but I guess going off of the figures on the paper that you see in the designs, it doesn't show the upstairs fitness room, which has another, I think, 12 kids.
Okay, and you mentioned about going to the restroom, have supervision 2 at a time with staff. Is that regular staff? Is that volunteer staff?
Well, at Shabundy Park, that would be staff would team up with Bound. Their staff would take the kids to the restroom. They're actually running the summer camp at Shabundy. At Seagull Park, they actually oversees the summer camp at Shabundy Park.
They're overseeing the summer camp at Shabundy?
Yeah, they've been doing that for the last 5 years. We do Seagull Park, and our agreement with them was to register 25 Opa-locka kids through the program, which they would serve. And we just do the maintenance of the building, keeping everything clean and monitoring the grounds staff-wise that we have. But they have a staff of 6 people, 1 certified teacher that will be working with the kids.
Okay, I'm not gonna bother that right now. Okay, I didn't hear anything or component. I know this is dealing with summer camp, but will the seniors still have any activities?
Yes, we'll be putting out our seniors program hopefully next week. What we did and what I asked Ms. Banks to do, the seniors coordinator, is to poll our seniors, find out what seniors, still want to participate. I know a lot of them are worried about the virus as well, but what we will be doing with them, it won't be a lot of transportation activities. They will be coming to the center. We will be getting the old senior citizen buildings back in shape for them to go to the senior citizen building that we had previously used in the past.
Are you offering any virtual things for them right now?
That setup is just going to be similar to the summer camp as well.
Okay, and what is the cost going to be for summer camp participants?
We haven't made a decision on prices yet. We're just waiting on the go-ahead plan. But what we always charged last year during the summertime, our fees were $25 a week per participant. And I don't anticipate that to change unless the Mayor and Commission wants us to go up on the prices.
Okay, so it's $25 what, a week?
Yes, per child.
Okay, you have listed, so I guess I'm interested in the type of games and activities, because as you said, there are a lot of things out there now for the new norm for virtual and activities that don't require contact, or a lot of folks, I guess I'll say it like that. The other question I have is more a realistic one. You got these things going on the inside. What do you plan to do about folks who are going to show up on the outside? Maybe that's for the manager, because you're going to have people show up that's not part of the program. What's the plan to deal with that? Maybe that's to the manager in terms of security.
I could speak on that as well, Commissioner Kelly, because we talked about that, and Commissioner Bass did make a valid point. We are planning on designing, like we do our football fields. You know how we put it in a rectangular striping position when it's a football game, but we're gonna do miniature boxes with the appropriate distance for families to come out. If they're gonna come out, they have to stay within that particular area, and that's where park staff will play a role. We basically will monitor that. We know certain things they cannot do. If they go on the basketball court, it's only 3 at a time on the basketball court, and if it's 3 participants on a basketball court, they must have an independent ball. They can't play with a ball together. So if they're playing basketball on the basketball court, it has to be three at a time, and it must be 3 basketballs out there. So once I read that from the county, I decided to make sure we have a lot of basketballs in place for the ones that do come out, because I know families don't have 3 basketballs at one time to be coming to a park. So we're still walking through the particulars on how we're going to do that. But basketball, I know it's going to be one thing that's going to be utilized out there. So we got to make sure we have enough of basketballs for the families to use. Far as the picnic and the shelters, they're not allowed to use that right now. But for the open space, they can sit out and as a family and enjoy the sceneries. But the playgrounds and things of that nature right now through the county is off guard right now.
Okay, I know there's certain things, as you mentioned, even with basketball, pools and stuff like that, the counties still made some decisions. I guess we'll talk a little bit more about that as time progresses. I see the layout. Everybody knows the parks are partial and passionate to me. I still have some other questions, but for the brevity of time, I know my colleagues want to ask. I'm going to turn loose right now, and then I guess the other ones I'll ask the manager later. But I thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? All right. I have a few questions. Number one, what guidelines were used to develop our summer camp program?
When you say guidelines, we actually was working off what Miami-Dade County limited us to do as far as participation in space, where Miami-Dade County said is a 10 maximum kid in the space. They cannot overlap. They must stay in that particular space the whole day during the summer camp day of activities. So we actually worked off of that, and that's why we set up our rooms in a particular way that we did, and tried to make a couple of interesting exercises so it won't be that cross-reference of our kids. So we actually followed the Miami-Dade County guidelines for us summer camp participants.
Oh, so they do have all right.
Yes, they gave us a number amount that you can have in one located area, which is 10. And they cannot cross-reference. They cannot share the different rooms. They have to stay in the same room. So that's the practice that we came up with, far as trying to make sure that we follow those guidelines. And one of the most critical things that we have to look at too, as far as the testing, I don't know if technically if we can test a kid temperature before they come in or not, but there are 3 types of testing equipment that we can use, and we actually need that to be on the safe side. I didn't get in the format of that or putting it in the presentations because I wanted to do more research and bring it back to the city manager, which he then can bring back to commissioners and the mayor for approval. But the testing equipment is necessary as well.
And if you can afford
tester.
If you can forward those guidelines that were used to make this, that would be helpful, because I'm
okay. I can send that to you.
Doing some research so far, and I haven't seen any programs for the county, summer programs for the county. Do we know if any?
Their summer program has not.
Mr. Brown, let me finish my question. Are there any summer programs in the other surrounding municipalities or other cities? And the county, are they doing summer programs at the moment?
The county hasn't started a summer program. They will start looking into that as of June 6th. That's their rollout date. And once that becomes available, and actually what they're going to be doing on the summer camp, there may be something we may have to take a second look at. We're just trying to get ahead of the game and prepare a plan for the mayor commission on what we're trying to do. But June 6th, the county will be moving forward with their programming.
Okay.
And you can go on Miami-Dade County Parks and Recreation, and they'll give you the information.
Okay. Yeah, we can get that information. I want to make sure that We are in alignment with the prevailing experts. I know we don't have the staffing to provide the expertise from the CDC and how it applies to summer camps and summer programs. I want to make sure that we are in alignment with that if we're moving forward with summer programs at the moment. There was a reference to housing sick kids in our office space. Like,
It's not housing sick kids. With the virus situation, we just wanted to designate an area. If a kid didn't feel good, we'll bring him out of that particular area, call their parents, and they can come pick him up. We just don't want him to be sick, and if he's sick, he has an opportunity to pass the sickness around. It's not that it's a doctor's office or anything. We just want to have maybe a couch or TV or something in that to keep him comfortable or her comfortable in the event they're not feeling well.
okay. And with the different rooms, I heard that you say there was one certified teacher. How would that one certified teacher provide programming to the kids spread across different rooms?
I would have to get with Team Up with Bound on that. I kind of have a feeling she may be doing it or he may be doing it within the facility virtually as well. In one area that person may be with, and everybody's logged on to that person.
So kids will be basically put in those seats and they have to stay in those seats as outlined for the whole day from 8 a.m. to, what was it, 4 p.m.?
8 to 4, yes, that's correct.
And in those seats, all of them are provided a laptop or something of that nature, and they just sit there. How does that work?
Well, it would be a television set and a PlayStation where multiple kids can use it. And the good thing about that is wireless, and the distance will still be appropriate. We don't have cable wires, and we can have all 6 or 10 play or use the virtual system as well at the same time. So that's the good thing about the wireless capabilities with the joysticks or things that I don't know what they call them, but what they used to, play the games with.
Okay, so if I'm looking at this, I'm just trying to understand. For example, in Shabundy Park, we have kids separated into 5 rooms.
Correct.
And in those 5 rooms, 3 of those rooms have more than 10 kids.
Correct.
So, and I know a PlayStation has 2 remotes. So we're investing in multiple PlayStations and for each room and television sets for each room, and the kids will be basically playing games and watching TV all day.
Well, that's about what virtual program is all about. It's no outside activities for the kids. We're gonna be indoors. That's the nature of the summer camp this year. It's no gathering on the park on the outside. We will take them out to use the basketball court, but it can only be 3 at a time. So by the time that process is through, they will get some outside activity, but that's basically it. And that came from the new guidelines from the county that we can take them outside, and it must be 3 separate basketball for the kids. So we'll come up with some type of curriculum plan to give them some outside activities, but it won't be that much.
Yeah, that's concerning to me. And
it is.
I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to see how this will work. And if I was to send my little ladies out there, I just don't.
It's uncharted waters, Mayor. And
I don't even know what to say. Actually, I really don't. I really don't. I really don't. I just say that it seems we need more clarity, no more expert guidance, and to see what Miami-Dade Public Schools, the Children's Trust, those who specialize in dealing with kids in this type of programming. I would love to have their level of expertise to review our facilities, review our programming, and ensure that we're maximizing what we're doing with people's kids, and also making sure that they're very safe and that insurance. I know that's something that I would like as a father, and probably others would like. And I would love to see if we can get that level of assistance. I don't know if we can request, or have there been a request from Miami-Dade, from somebody from Miami-Dade Public Schools or Children's Trust that can provide that level of guidance and analysis to our programming to ensure that it is safe and productive for the kids that attend. The other thing, you mentioned briefly that there'll be changes due to air conditioning, like we're having air conditioning issues that have not been addressed yet.
That is correct.
What's the plan to address the air conditioning once and for all? I know if something happens in my house, I'm gonna take care of it.
Well, Public Works is working on that right now, so.
Mr. Matt, I know this is, I've been hearing about this air condition for too long. What's going on with it? Like, why aren't we, or can we get some type of resolution to that? Because if we got kids going to be inside these facilities and staff members inside these facilities, they deserve to be in a comfortable environment. You're muted, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I will look into that matter with Public Works and find a permanent solution to resolve it.
All right. And lastly, I know during public comment, our resident talked about multilingual services. Do we have any staff that are able to provide multilingual services to kids that participate in summer programs, or ESO, or anything like that?
Mr. Brown, that's a question for you, sir. You know your staff. Is there anybody on your staff that speaks Spanish or Creole, multilingual?
No.
All right, I believe that should be a consideration that we should definitely, if we're going to be providing those type of services to this community, we probably should have at least one person who can communicate to people that do not speak English, or can assist them in that transition. The last point was, hold up. Oh man, I forgot my last point. Oh, the advertising. That's one thing that I've always had an issue. I rarely see any advertising for our summer program at all, or even a place to actually find out the details of it, the cost of it, and all those things. Where is the information about the program being listed? Where is it being promoted to ensure that all of our residents have an opportunity to participate? You mentioned that there's usually just the same group of kids that get in. Is it an opportunity for other kids to get in? And how are they supposed to take advantage of these services if we provide them as a city?
Well, the summer camp is open to everyone, and I made that comment because certain group of parents know first come, first serve, so they're basically always the first ones there to get their application. The application and flyers are distributed throughout all the parks facilities, and we also put them on the 4th floor of City Hall for summer camp registration. And we pass the flyers out to the schools as well before school is out. But you know, we don't have that opportunity, that luxury to do that this year.
So there's no online application, there's no online information. Everything has to, somebody has to actually find the piece of paper.
They have to come to the, They would have to come to the park, yes, to pick up an application. It's not online yet.
All right, Mr. Manager, I think that is something that we need to address as soon as possible.
Understand.
We're 21st century right now. Like we should definitely have online application process and also information that details our program and even a partnership. If and we have a partnership with Teen Upward Bound. And tell me this, and this is other question. So is it two different programs? One run by the city, one run by the Teen Upward Bound? Is it a program where Teen Upward Bound runs both programs? Like, how does that actually work?
Team Upward Bound is responsible for the summer camp at Shabundy Park. The summer camp at Siegel Park is city ran.
So there's two different applications?
Yes. There's a Team Upward Bound joint application with Parks and Recreation, and then there's a City of Opa-locka registration application at Siegel Park, not a Team Upward Bound application.
So what's the difference between one and the other? And if a parent wants to go to one to the other, what would make them choose one program over the other?
Well, I guess, I don't know if they actually go for the competition of it. They just go to the availability. So it's never been an issue with numbers being filled at the facilities. They come in, they actually, most of the time, they actually think it's a park and recreational activity at Shabundy when they come to Shabundy. It's always been parks and recreation for the last 5 years. It's been Team Upward Bound, but for the last 10 years before that, Parks and Recreation ran both facilities. We never had a issue with it being another entity or in competition with Parks and Recreation. We always ran the summer program, but it became a partnership with Team Upward Bound the last 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. And that's where we are today.
So I heard that Teen Upward Bound has a certified teacher. So
yes,
that's
they have a certified teacher for the summer. Yes.
Shabundy Park, is that
only at Shabundy? Yes.
Let me finish. The certified teacher, does that certified teacher also service Siegel? And if not, do we have a certified teacher for the Siegel kids?
That person doesn't serve the kids at Siegel, and no, we don't have a certified teacher as of this moment.
So if parents would like some type of certified teacher level of programming, Teen Upward Bound would be the choice.
Yes.
All right, those are the things I would like clearly delineated. I know for months I've been asking for a park plan to get a very clear understanding of our facilities and the types of programming that we offer as a city. To this date, I still have not received that level of detail that shows what are our programming, what are our services, and now that we're dealing with COVID-19, those things have changed dramatically. So what does that look like moving forward? And what will that be? And that's what I was hoping to receive today, not just as an analysis of what we're doing for this summer, but what is going to be our recreational plan? How are we going to engage, as Commissioner Kelly said, our seniors? How are we engaging young adults? How are we engaging all the various different populations that we have and our diverse populations? What are we doing as a city to do that? And how are we utilizing and leveraging our facilities to make that possible? I would love to see that, like, please, see that so that we can show what our taxpayer dollars are going to and be able to provide that service and let people know. Right now, I think if I promote the summer program, I would say, okay, you can pick up an application at the parks facilities to apply. There's two different applications, one for Teen Upward Bound, one for parks. One is at Siegel Park, one is at Shabundy. One has a certified teacher, and the kids will be I guess, on a plate. I'll stop. I'll stop. But I want a more robust thing so that we can actually promote this and promote these programs. So if we can get that, that'll be very helpful.
Understood. Mayor, any other questions in regards to Parks and Recreation before we move on to the police department?
Right. And anyone else have any other questions, comments?
May I
Mr. Mayor?
please?
Mayor?
Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Kelly, then Vice Mayor Davis.
Just quickly, to whomever, Mr. Brown mentioned being in partnership with Team Upward Bound. I was just wondering, what are the liabilities? Well, who's responsible if something happens? We're dealing with kids. And also when he mentioned about the kids being in the same space for basically 8 hours a day, I don't know how that is going to work. I have 9 grandbabies and I can't see that happening. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know why we think this just happened. This partnership with Team Upward Bound been going on for a few years. And you've got the same challenge. The only challenge is because of COVID-19, you're restricted in a lot of ways, but it's not like it's something new. It's been going on for years. Having said that, I know that they provide program services, et cetera. What I really want to get to Mr. Brown, to the manager, 2 things. I know you're waiting on the county to unveil more information, et cetera, before you complete your final analysis. So I'm quite sure with the Children's Trust that I heard mentioned involved, I'm quite sure they got to come out and look at things to see if it meets their approval, particularly if they're putting funding into it. And I'm quite sure you can get somebody from the county to come out and look as well. What's the anticipated date start of the program itself? If all things go well, Mr. Manager or Mr. Brown, what are y'all looking at?
Sometime in July. It wouldn't be.
Sometime in July.
Yes, first or second week in July. If we get a plan that's approved by Miami-Dade County within the next week.
Okay, so because I heard Mr. Brown indicate that they're still waiting on some information or something opening up from the county on June the 6th. Exactly what was that?
The county is going to, I guess, come out with a plan on summer programming, summer activities in the parks. So.
Okay, so you haven't heard a date for them yet of when they're planning on opening?
No.
Okay, so we're still, what you gave us is something preliminary that you're looking at. So we got time, obviously.
Yes.
Now we got it, and come up with exact specific programming that you would be doing with your partnership and at Siegel Park and staffing, et cetera. You have time to get some volunteers if need be that can help you with the Creole and Spanish. I'm quite sure the folks out there in the summer, home from college. So I would anticipate, Mr. Manager, and to my colleagues, we will be having some kind of final workshop or something that will sign off on whatever is being proposed, since we're not going to probably start our camps until, you said, Mr. Manager, first week of July or something. Is that what I heard you say?
Correct.
Okay, so I'll await the information and whatever comes out from the county. Right now, it'd be too premature in terms of the rest of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to kind of track back a little bit along the lines of, temperature checks. I saw that we didn't really have any measures in place, and I think that's very important. I don't know if we could implement something, for our parks and recs, or actually for the city at large, because I think it's very important that we are testing our employees, or at least checking their temperatures at a bare minimum. I know when we first kind of discussed the issue, we were having trouble with having our staff actually come out and get tested, even though we had allocated a day for them to do so. So I would like, I would like to hear from, commission or the board to see if something can be done along those same lines, or maybe just, testing temperatures, because in my opinion, Commissioner Bass alluded to liability, us opening up is ultimately, exposing ourselves to, more liability, no matter, who it falls on, right? especially with the spread of COVID. So definitely want to, maybe look at that, and maybe, it's something we should look at citywide and not just for the Parks and Recs department as we get ready to reopen. Thank you.
Thank you. And just lastly, just to clarify, I want us to realize that we are still in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic, and our population, we do have quite a bit of cases based upon our population, and those being tested. So we got to be extra careful, and I want to make sure that we're taking the time to really get the best understanding and insight. I know that when it came to reopening our businesses, the county put out a plan, and we're basically scrambling in the last few days to try and put something together within the city that reflects the county guidelines. And right now, it's a similar situation. The governor's office, the governor's office released the restrictions on summer programs, but the county mayor said that June 8th is when they're looking to open up. But where are those guidelines at? So I don't know if we're in communication with their offices to get the latest update. I don't know, but I really want to make sure that we have that level of assurance that we can say that this program has been in alignment with Miami-Dade County and the experts to make sure that the spread, we don't contribute to the spread of this disease. So as long as that's in play and that there's something productive happening, I'm okay, but I want to make sure that those things are laid out and it's clear, and our parents and people in our residents in the community have that level of clarity and comfort too. So, with that, if there's not any other comments on Parks and Recreation.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Burke.
If I can remember well, Mr. Mayor, to the city manager. Mr. City Manager, I think in one of our last meetings, you said that you were looking into getting a temperature thing for City Hall and checking the people going in, the temperatures. What happened with that?
That's still in process. The state actually approved the emergency expenditure. The unit is on order, and we're waiting for delivery and installation.
Okay. Can we also get something, I must say, portable, like the Vice Mayor say, for the kids for summer camp?
That's no problem at all whatsoever to get portable temperature monitors. That's not an issue at all whatsoever.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I think that concludes the conversation about Parks and Recreation. You have the floor, Mr. Manager.
Okay, I'd like to bring up Chief Dobson to go over the police department report for COVID-19.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commission. What you have before you is a memo that was written from my office to the city manager. Basically, you have on the memo attached, you have calendars for the month of April and the month of May, depicting costs for service, what we've had costs for service, and also within those costs for service, you have an appendix here where it shows business checks, curfew violations, social distancing and face mask warnings, businesses that were closed. In the month of April, the police department had a total of 3,331 calls for service. That's all calls for service that came into the police department. And if you look at the different dates here in the month of April, you will see if we take April 9th. On April 9th, you have two, where we had two arrests, which were promise to appear arrests. There were 5 warnings for social distancing and face masks, and there were 10 inspections that were conducted, business checks that were conducted on that day. So you see on each day of the month, you have what was done outside of the regular cost for service with whether our road units or the COVID squad that we have. And our COVID squad, basically what we did is we took two detectives, put them in uniform. We took the person that was doing our red light cameras, put her in uniform, and our 2 school resource officers. So they gave us additional 5 officers, and their main job was to not only assist the road, to have more officers on the road, but to also handle any COVID-related issues that occurred. That's the month of April. And we also basically did the same thing for the month of May. And each month is broken down. The month of May, we had a total of 3,856 calls, and that was up until May 25th, on May 25th. A total of 784 business checks, along with police and code enforcement, and also the COVID squad. 16 arrests for curfew violations, a total of 825 social distancing and face mask warnings, and 11 businesses throughout this time were closed, whether they were given warnings first for people going inside the businesses without the face mask, or we had liquor stores prior to that were closed. We had the Elegant Beauty and some gas stations that were warned several times about allowing business or people in that did not have their facial covering. So those businesses were actually closed for that evening and allowed to be reopened on the next day. That was on yesterday at the commission meeting. Also, the concern was the increased amount of shootings that we've had here in the city. Today, I reached out to our neighboring cities, Miami-Dade Northside District, North Miami Police, and Hialeah. And basically, we're going to be meeting all next week to discuss that, because there's some correlation. Right now, none of the agencies are sure if it's drugs, gang related, or just people out that's part of that's not currently working, that are unemployed, or just trying to go out just to get funding or get monies or something else. But at this point, none of the agencies are sure. We're investigating, and we're providing our same intelligence with one another to try to find out exactly why. But it looks like maybe some correlation, because on some of the same days that we have shootings, they were either in Hialeah, North Miami, or Miami-Dade Northside. So and sometimes we've had increased in crime or crime alone. Some of the people are going back between the different cities. So that's where we are now, trying to form something jointly to find exactly why we've had the increase and what's the cause of it. I'm here to take any questions at this time regarding COVID.
Any questions, comments for the chief?
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you. Looking at the data or the report that the police department provided from April to May, it's interesting that those warnings went up so much in May. The arrests went down. And when I look at the business checks as well, they seem to went up quite, I'm assuming because businesses open back up. So that's the reason for it. But I heard you say at the end, Chief, regarding the shootings and things, you all don't attribute that to reopening, you all attribute that to something else going on? Is that what I heard you say, Mayor, to the Chief?
Commissioner, at this point, we're actually not sure, but speaking to the chiefs and the command staff at the other agencies, we're actually not sure, but we don't know yet, but we're trying to put out intelligence with their intelligence to see, but they're thinking maybe it could be something where it'll be gangs or drug related, but unsure at this time exactly why. But one of the arrests that we made for one of the shootings, the information, the person actually was a shooter here, but lived in unincorporated Miami-Dade Northside District. So that's why we're trying to correlate to see if it was something related to one of the 3 things that was spoke of.
With the warnings that you all have been giving out for social distance, but really primarily for the mask, since you have them both together, what has been the response? Residents don't have a mask, they're saying you don't have access to a mask, or is it is it more for social distancing? You got them combined, so I don't know how it breaks down.
Yes, sir. A little both, mainly social distancing, but when the officers have responded to apartment complexes or wherever the large groups might have been, when asked, advise them to social distance, then they're asked, well, you guys have any masks or anything like that? The majority of the time, no, the residents did not have any masks.
Okay, and I saw the picture up earlier regarding the finance a little bit, but when I look at that, I know you have, I think, 4 officers or 5 officers that are, you call the COVID-19 officers that are coming in later or specifically assigned for that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. 5 officers.
5 officers, and they're usually working what, at night or?
Yes, sir. They're currently now working from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m.
And I'm assuming because that's been the major part of your challenging times of needing manpower, staffing, so you got them doing that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, to the manager, financially, we are submitting, I assume, all of this to reimbursement. Is this all possible or potential reimbursement for the cost for public safety?
Yes, sir. Overtime, not regular hours of work, only overtime that's done related to COVID-19, and that's up to 75%. It could be a little over 80% if the state does additional reimbursement, but typically it's 75% of that cost.
Okay, well, let me just say, I'll listen to my colleague. I appreciate the report information, but I'm still getting calls from residents, and I didn't hear you address the apartment complex themselves. The last correspondence we received is supposed to be a meeting being set up, and I keep saying I don't like those play on words of conversations of going to meet, because it seems like we never get to meet with anybody. Now we're going to meet with them on the water, but we had a meeting already scheduled for the challenges of social distancing, masking, et cetera, curfew. Did that meeting ever take place?
Commissioner, I'm working currently now with the building department. I have a list of all 45 apartment properties that we have here in the city, and I'm still working to get all the owners' information. On some listed, we only have the name and address. So they're back searching now to get telephone numbers and also the owner's information. I was in the building department today. They assured me that I should have some of those documents tomorrow. And for the larger apartment complexes, once I get the information, I'll provide to the manager to let you know when a meeting with the owner has been set. But at this time, no, sir, we do not have a meeting set with the owners.
Thank you, Chief. This is really to the manager. That is, to me, not acceptable, Mr. Manager. But a simple fact, I mean, I know the chief can only do what he can do and get numbers from whomever, but it would appear to me we should have access to somebody quicker than waiting on a department to give us a phone number. I mean, you all reached somebody yesterday to talk about that water, so somebody should be able to reach somebody prior to now to talk about curfews and masks, et cetera. To me, it's just going round in circles, but he still got the same challenges in the same areas. Let me just end my thoughts on this by saying that I still get calls about shootings and responses and police coverage, et cetera. So I'm hopeful that these numbers like you all are out there, so we'll see what's going to occur going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments or questions for the chief about enforcement? I was want to get some clarity on Commissioner Kelly. Did you say you want the city to meet with all the property owners of apartment complexes?
You talking to me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner Kelly, yes.
No. I said, if you recall, when we met a few weeks ago, the manager, chief, were going to get with the owners of the apartment complex that we have the challenges with to try to speak with someone about social distancing and masks and their security they have. Well, here we are weeks later, and according to the chief, they're still trying to get a number to them. Now, he mentioned all the apartment complexes. I was referencing the ones that we had the challenges with, but he's still trying to get telephone numbers just to talk to somebody. Here we are 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. And to me, that's not moving quick enough. I mean, to get access or get a number to someone to deal with this issue. But according to the chief, he's waiting on getting all of these numbers. I wasn't talking about all of the numbers because you basically know the challenges that you have. It's not with all of the apartment complexes. You know where they are. You know, they get the calls. They've had the challenges with curfews and social distancing, but apparently we don't have the numbers for them, according to what the chief is saying.
So yeah, I'm trying to figure out what would be the plan of action. Because I know in apartment complexes, like for example, owner basically owns a property. He has a property manager. And so the owner is kind of usually pretty far away from the property. They're not really closely tied to it. And then the property manager basically mostly focuses on maintenance and leasing. So we want to ask them to focus on what exactly?
I want them to focus the same thing that you all are talking to them about the water. You said you met with somebody or whomever met with somebody yesterday, talk about the water issue and all of that. We had this challenge over the last month in some of the apartment complexes with social distancing, with parties, with wearing masks. You had the whole issue about curfews and people sitting on their porch, et cetera. The chief, the manager via the chief is going to reach out to the owners, the manager, whomever, to speak with them about assisting us with getting information out, educating the residents, so forth and so on, because we're getting these calls over there. You've seen on social media having parties. We got to go out there. I think last week or 2 weeks ago, we had to have the county and other agencies come in to help us because there were so many people having functions. So they were supposed to be reaching out to someone to talk to them about, educating residents, helping out or whatever form, because it is private property. I've said all along, we should have to go up there, but we have to because we get the calls. They're our residents. It's just like the water issue. It's private property, but yet all of us got the calls about flooding, et cetera, so forth. So we want to try to do something, even though it's private property. Well, the same thing applies with the social distancing, the mask, the curfew, the challenge they've had over there in those complexes over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And here we are now at the end of May and haven't even had a conversation yet. We're still trying to get somebody's telephone number. That's unacceptable. I don't care if it's the property manager, the regional manager, even if it's not the owner, we haven't even had a conversation yet. We're waiting on getting no phone numbers. That's to me doesn't make, I don't understand that. But that was my question, why I asked it that way.
Mr. Manager?
Yes. So for clarification's sake, Commissioner Kelly's requesting us to reach out to the ownership of the property. The biggest issue that's been brought up is talking to the property manager as the middleman. We should be talking to the owner of the property. To be perfectly clear to the public and to the commission, the police department on numerous times has had communication with property management at the properties that we've had issues with. Ingram, Garden, and every other properties that we have issues with. We've met with property management on multiple occasions. And so that is who we're dealing with. Commissioner Kelly has requested us to bypass the middle person, which is the property manager, and get to the owners about these issues. So I want to make it clear, the city has taken action in dealing with the property management companies. The police department has very regular access to the property management companies of these buildings. We're speaking specifically on managers. So there's no lack of inaction on behalf of the manager's office of the police department to interact with the management companies. Commissioner Kelly is speaking on ownership.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Commissioner Kelly?
Okay, so hearing you say, Mr. Manager, so then everything is under control now that you've spoken to property managers? Is that what you're telling me?
No, everything's not under control. We've met with property management, police department met with property management multiple times. and no, everything is not under control, which is why we're escalating it up as you requested to get to bypass the middle person and actually try to get in touch with the owners of these properties to try to garner some assistance.
Okay, I want to be very clear. I'm not asking you or have asked anyone to bypass the process. What I have noticed in listening to the memos, the dialogue from the chief and the manager, we're not getting anywhere with the property managers that are local. So to me, you got to go to a higher level because nothing has changed. Now, if things have changed and the de-escalation of calls and curfew challenges and social distancing have decreased, then that means the property managers have educated or got the residents to understand what's at stake. But if not, then we're back at square one. So I will just await to see how the manager and the chief reaches out to whomever and see what the next levels are. And I will communicate that, to residents that it's being looked into. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I was asking those questions. I just want to get more clarity on how we are dealing with the cases. Our understanding is that the problem is that we are having issues or we're leading to a high number of arrests. Could you give me an understanding of where those arrests are within the city of Opa-locka? Are there focused in just apartment complexes, corner stores? Like where are these issues taking place?
Yes, sir. Majority of the arrests have definitely occurred in the apartment complexes, and a few have occurred at convenience stores, but majority of the arrests have occurred within the apartment complexes, yes.
And that's basically, we are arresting people because mostly it's curfew violations of them being outside of their homes in apartment complexes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Yeah, I guess that's the issue. Discretion issue. And I'll let that be.
Mr. Mayor?
One of the concerns that I have with I got you, Vice Mayor, give me one moment. Is we are talking about implementing a mask ordinance. What has been the feedback from residents when officers are enforcing mask orders in businesses? And what has that been like? Have you experienced a high level of what could you give us a report on how is that going with businesses and residents or people, period?
Well, since we've closed a few businesses, we haven't had any issues since with people wearing masks going inside businesses. Most of the businesses that we've educated or talked to have signs on the door basically saying no mask, no entry. And so for the most part, people have been following that. So the businesses down that we've currently been going to in the last few weeks, we haven't had any issues or anything like that with people not wanting to wear a mask to go inside the building themselves, inside a business.
Okay, because that's one of my major concerns. I want to make sure that if we're going to move forward with implementing this mask ordinance, that it is going to be respectably enforced. The whole point is to ensure that people that may have the disease are not spreading it to others. And I want to make sure we have our enforce code enforcement, police enforcement, being able to remind people and being able to touch people to protect and serve people throughout the city of Opa-locka. So I'm sensitive to that. Definitely want to get a lot more, but for the sake of time, we can move on. But for that, Vice Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to touch on a couple quick points. I see that we were pretty much discussing like the best practice, I guess, to reach out to local property owners, mostly those in our multifamily spaces. Just as a best practice, remember when we all were elected in November of 2018. December of that year, we hosted a meeting with management of Glorietta Gardens apartment, as well as the management at Cadobra Courts. with our city manager as well as staff and other elected officials. How we kind of got to that point was we went through the property management company. I mean, usually the property management company would know who the owners are. They're directed, by someone. They have a relationship with the owner. So we're having a problem, searching for that information. It should within the city. It should be able to be provided through the property management company. Also, as a side note, even with all that kind of due diligence and doing the research to see, who's the actual decision maker, you're really gonna meet a property owner. I've met with several property management companies, and the highest I've ever got in my advocacy efforts was a representative, like the manager alluded to. So usually a property owner will hire a representative to kind of deal with the circumstances of the property and the issues as they arise. In Glorietta Gardens in particular, that was the case. We met with a representative of the owner. We know who the owner is, but he doesn't really do any interactions on behalf of the business, or behalf of his property personally. So that's one thing. Another thing is related to the arrests, related to curfew. My opinion, I wasn't really a fan of the sanctions that were kind of outlined in the ordinance, but I did support the ordinance because I knew that that is important for us to social distance and kind of limit our activity from the city's perspective. I noticed that arrests have actually gone down. And I don't know if the chief could provide some sort of indicator as to why those arrests are going down. Like, are we educating people more? Are we, because it appears to me that it seems to be a more internal issue. We voted to implement the policy, so did other cities. And, they didn't kind of yield the same result as us. So I would like to, just send an inquiry to the chief to, through the mayor to see exactly, I guess, what happened and what those drop in numbers can be attributed to.
Vice Mayor, that if you look at for the month of May, you could see the last arrest we had for the month of May would have been like May 10th, maybe May 10th. So basically, what the officers are telling me that are out here on the May 10th, May 11th, but are out here actually, people are just complying. We don't have the traffic that's being outside of curfew. So most of the times they're coming in contact, it's the social distance or whatever, or the business checks during those hours. But for the curfew hours, basically in the apartment complexes and throughout the community and the city, everybody's actually been coming in compliance, and the officers haven't had many issues with people not complying with the curfew at this time.
Okay, so I'm under the impression that the education eventually worked, and they get it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so so your recommendation is the law still, is it still needed? Like, if residents kind of get the picture, they're social distancing, they're not really having parties, you're in touch with those officers that are on the ground in those communities every day. So you receive that feedback on their behalf. Do you think the law is needed, the curfew? I mean, I know no other cities have officially taken the curfew off their books, but that's something we're monitoring as we currently have changes by the day. So I just want to kind of hear that feedback from those staff that are on the ground.
Vice Mayor, I would say yes. I think that it's still needed. I guess until we get the numbers down, or till everything is open back up, I think that there would be a great idea to my recommendation, and it helps to limit the spread of COVID. So I think it would be a great idea to keep the curfew, at least until the numbers are down, until things change.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions for the chief on enforcement?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Pate?
Yes. I stand on the side of caution. I believe it's statistically impossible to go from arrest to zero with no enforcement over several days. So I would urge the chief to check with his command staff and his supervisors to see if there's a lack of enforcement on the street, or if his staff is being directed not to enforce curfew, maybe because of perceptual issues that have occurred on the dais. And otherwise, I think it's statistically impossible for us to go from making arrests to now the last arrest on the 10th, and today is the 28th, and not one arrest. And I assure you there are people out in the apartments. I assure you there are people violating curfew, because I get the calls every night. Our commissioners are getting the calls. I'm getting the calls. So I would urge the chief strongly to do a reassessment on this matter. And if that's the case, then congratulations to the city of Opa-locka, but I highly doubt it.
Thank you for that, Mr. Manager. I mean, I was under the impression that, if we're educating residents that good, right, we wouldn't need to pass the law in the first place. I must admit, I wish we could have found, some balance within the law. Like I said, that wasn't, our intent, although we had to pretty much adopt the law as is, which outlined, misdemeanor crime, and outlined it as a misdemeanor crime, and we ended up criminalizing many of our residents, which was, not my intent at all. I would hope, Mr. Manager, that you will look at this issue a little more intimately, to maybe explore what type of breakdown that the police department actually had with enforcing. As it relates, to the curfew, I guess that's for us to decide as a board. Whether what we do with it, either way. But it appears to me that something is wrong with the enforcement or the grassroots level of our police department and their interactions with the community. I know implicit bias training has become popular. Many, police departments have adopted that sort of training. And, I would hope we would look at options like that and other forms of training to better enhance our interactions with the community as we move forward.
Any other questions for the chief? Enforcement? All right, Mr. Manager, you have the floor.
I'm sorry, I do have one more question for the chief. And I know we're going to get into this a little bit later into the presentation, but I would ask if there's potential issues with enforcement of curfew. Is the police department able to enforce face mask ordinance if this is passed? I mean, we don't want to pass another law and there's enforcement issues in regards to it. So are we capable of passing a law in regards to face masks at this point if we're having issues with potential compliance and enforcement of curfew?
I would say yes, Mr. Manager, that they could enforce it. You see the amount of context we've had with the warnings, we would definitely will be able to enforce and continue with the enforcement of that. Currently, right now, if you look at the month of May, the officers have had between social distance and face masks 825 warnings. So we would definitely be able to enforce that if it's passed.
My fear is that we pass this law and then that number 825 dissipates down to 10 or 20 or 30 because of lack of enforcement. I just want to stand cautious in this. And Chief, this is nothing against you or your agency at all whatsoever. On an everyday basis, you know, I am challenged by my bosses in regards to this subject, you know. And like I said, the phone calls are coming in on the weekend, you know, and the complaints are coming in. There's still parties, there's still things going on. And I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of what we're doing here and not adding another layer of compliance if we're having issues of compliance right now with curfew. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm for or against face masks. I am for enforcement. And I think I've had that stance over the last 3 weeks. I'm for enforcement. I think the commission's for enforcement. I think the issue is people being sent to the jail compared to somebody getting a promise to appear, I think was the biggest conflict. I would feel more comfortable with enforcement if I saw 20 promises to appear a week and nobody going to the jail. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that the commission's concerns is not necessarily the enforcement. The biggest concerns were people going into the jail, being exposed to COVID-19 and various different things like that. If we need to enforce, we need to enforce. And I don't want to add another layer of enforcement if we're not ready. I'm sorry about that. I know I took a protracted, long response, but I just want to make sure I made that clear.
You have the floor for next subject.
I asked our budget administrator, Mr. Anathan, to start his presentation in regards to COVID-19 expenditures.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Bob Anathan, Budget. I think the status is pretty well summarized in the memo that was distributed previously. You will now get weekly an update on the monies that have been expended in response to COVID-19. As per the last report, which I believe is part of the presentation tonight, $180,000 have definitely been expended, and there's a belief that we can see another 40,000 in the near term. I would caution of the 40,000, at least 20,000 estimate related to police overtime. I had to make a guess on that because at the time of that report, those numbers were not available. I know the chief is trending down his overtime in response to COVID-19 as things settle out somewhat. So the hard number is about 180,000, and then the speculative number at the moment is 40,000 on top of that. As has been discussed a couple times tonight, that is all, essentially should all be in fact eligible for FEMA consideration and be reimbursed at the 75% level. And as the manager mentioned, if the state comes aboard later, that's typically another 12.5%. If that occurs, then the 75 will go to 87.5%. There was a well, let me stop right there and see if there's any questions on the report itself. And if not, then I'll progress to, there's been an ongoing discussion as to what funds are available to spend in addition to what's been considered so far in terms of additional responses to COVID-19. So first, if I can stop and see if there are any questions on the expense report, and if not, then I'll move on. Excuse me.
Any questions on the expense report? I don't know who just went first. Who? Someone said something?
Kelly has it.
Oh, Commissioner Kelly. Okay, Commissioner Kelly, go.
Yes, I would just ask Mr. Manager, before we meet again, I can still barely hear. I'll bring my laptop in, but I can barely hear most of all of these conversations for some reason. Mr. Mayor, to the budget administrator, and looking at your memo to the manager, I see 3 ifs. If this, there's 3 things. I see 3 ifs, and if all those align properly, we would have the availability of something of money that we could spend if need be. But you also note regarding the operational audit and the fund balance, rainy day fund, what have you, and looking at that, it almost appears to be, as you say, would be a negative. So is it your opinion that unless something really you just got to have that we not spend anymore related to COVID-19? Now, I'll give you an example, maybe if I'm not making myself clear. Right now, we have 5 officers additionally got assigned for COVID-19, and I guess other things we're doing related to it. How long can we sustain that before, in your opinion, we really need to look at how we're doing that?
Commissioner, you kind of stole my thunder on that. You'll have to excuse me because all of a sudden I have a very noisy air conditioning, but I'm going to try and talk over top of it. I believe that the 5 officers assigned to COVID-19 patrol are not overtime, and therefore they would not even appear on this list. And I asked the chief to weigh in on that just to see if my assumption's correct.
Mr. Mayor?
Chief?
Yes, Commissioner, those 5 officers were moved. Their schedule was temporarily changed, so they are not on overtime on the COVID detail. Initially, it was offered as overtime, but because we were cutting back on the overtime, those 5 officers were moved from their current assignment and placed on this assignment to prevent the use of more overtime.
Okay, so we can, Mr. Mayor, so we can maintain them on this special detail, however long we need, with no impact because they're just on regular time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So all of the costs that we have laid out here, expense-wise, going forward, all of these are reoccurring costs for how long?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, is that for me or for the chief?
Oh, that's for you, Mr. Budget.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, there will be ongoing expenses. The chief may still have some overtime. I don't think that's gone to zero. I think people identified needs that at the moment they don't realize. So there will be some expenditure. If I can double back, you stole my thunder in terms of my memo, which I was going to get into next. The point I was trying to make on that, and the ifs are not, they're not heavy ifs. In other words, I'm not indicating that I really have doubt they're going to occur. But if they all align, i.e. if the bank does not choose to renege on the agreement, I assume they won't, but the economic climate is different and it's always possible. So I thought I would point it out. If we don't get hit by a hurricane, and that one I really don't have much insight into. The third if was if the state authorizes us to defer prior year payments to the state. And that one, I have a more positive sense that probably will occur. But if all 3 of those occur, in other words, the bank does not change their mind on releasing the $2.5 million, if we don't have a hurricane that suddenly causes run up another $1 million of expense, and if we are permitted to defer those payments of prior year red light payments to the state, for the year, the best I can see at the moment is that the general fund is going to generate a surplus of in excess of $2 million and maybe even pushing up towards $3 million. When looked at that in that sense, you say, well, okay, there's an awful lot of money to be spent. But the more important issue is the one that you mentioned secondarily, which is the question of fund balance. And fund balance is really the concept is a rainy day fund meant to be there for emergencies. The FY18 audit recently completed demonstrated that the fund balance or the rainy day fund is not in good shape. In fact, it's in bad shape at the moment. It's negative. Given the very limited information I have available in terms of FY19 results, my estimate is that will get about $500,000 better, but still going to be negative. And even if all the stars align, the rainy day fund or fund balance, if you will, probably at the end of this year is still going to be slightly negative. And that's concerning because one of the reasons for having a rainy day fund is to deal with what we're going to experience next year, which is a year of down revenue because of COVID-19. The way I structured the memo said, you know, it would be helpful to identify what additional programs the commission has in mind, cost them out, and then report back and say, okay, this is what the cost is going to be. what is the assessment of the benefit of making that expenditure? And is that the benefit that is derived from making that expenditure, is that worth impeding the ability to try to restore the rainy day fund? The thing to keep in mind in regard to the rainy day fund is by the time we become fully responsive to the audit and so forth, that rainy day fund should be in the range of about $3 million. It's a long way from that right now. And as I said, is a little bit concerning given what we have to do next year with less revenue due to COVID-19. So it's going to be an iterative process, identifying where the commission is interested in spending money and do that assessment as to, is there enough benefit from spending that money now to offset the fact of having those funds available next year when, as I said, it's going to be challenging because of revenue issues.
Okay, reason I'm asking that, I'm gonna give you an example to my colleagues as well. When we talked about park programming earlier and some of the things dealing with that, in my opinion, we may need staffing or adjustments just to do that, to make it safe, et cetera. I'm also looking at the fact, and again, maybe it's reimbursable because it's COVID-19 through FEMA, I'm not sure. That's a manager can answer that. We're going to need, if the mask ordinance, for example, passed, we need to put signage up like I've seen in other cities that have done this, permanent type signs, mask ordinance, so forth and so on. All those are cost as well. So I'm just wondering, in your mind as the budget director, is there amount, just general amount that you say, okay, I can project, or I see we can hit this amount or have this available for any COVID-19 related, whatever, but once we hit that number, we need to be very careful. Now the commission can decide what we spend it on, you know, the manager can make that recommendation or whatever and decide, but is there a number in your mind as the budget director that we need to, like, this is our cap unless something extraordinary that we can't see?
Commissioner, I'm going to throw that back at you. I do not have a number in mind. I would ask you to keep in mind any dollars spent on COVID-19 this year is not going to be available next year to get us through the reserves. And that's going to be a judgment call. There is no precise number. There is no correct number. It's just whatever the commission ultimately is comfortable with spending, that they feel that they can do that, get good benefit from having spent those dollars, and willing to live with the fact that those dollars won't be available next year if push comes to shove.
Okay. All right. I'll stop right there and hear what my colleagues have to say for the moment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Davis?
Thank you. Just for a point of clarity, Mr. Anderson, the rainy day fund, are you referring to our emergency reserves?
No, not at all. I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear.
So
I'm sorry, go on, please.
I was going to say, so it's just a separate pot of money that are unrestricted funds that the city can use outside of its emergency reserves, like for any, I guess, situation as it arrives?
Let me try and clarify it because I apologize. I'm apparently not doing a good job. There are reserves built into the current year budget, which are there to address what unexpected events may occur. Separately on your balance sheet, if we were in full, I don't want to use a compliance, but if we were consistent with what the Government Finance Office Association believes is an appropriate amount of reserves, and for the moment, let me call it cash, but it's a little more complicated, but it's close to near cash. We should have a balance of $3 million, which we would be able to look at for next year and say, okay, we're going to lose some revenue, and we could use that possibly to fund our way through and not do anything in terms of the level of service to be provided. At the moment, this is a negative number. So it's on the balance sheet. It's like looking at your checkbook and seeing that you're overdrawn for the moment. It doesn't say that we're in a cash emergency, but it does say that in terms of what should be available for us for dealing with such things, like last year's, I'm sorry, like next year's low revenue, it should be a positive number, and at the moment it's negative. So you've got to differentiate between things that have been built into the expenditures for this year on the budget, which we call contingencies, which are available to spend. But every time you spend a dollar from one of this year's contingencies, it's not falling to the bottom line, getting into the reserve and becoming available for next year. I don't know if that clarified or just confused.
No, that definitely clarified it. So I'm concerned about this shortfall because that's ultimately, and you say, how much is it? 3 million, 4 million?
Well, again, you know, the city is in a healthy position cash-wise. It's in a good position cash-wise. The lights aren't going to go out, the doors aren't going to close. But
Right.
the FY18 audit reported the fund balance, the available fund balance for the general fund, which is really what we're talking about, as a negative number. And as I said, the goal is to get it to a plus 3 million number over the next several years. With next year's challenges, it's going to be a little slower than I would have thought 3 months ago.
Okay, so and earlier in your report, you said that the city is developing a surplus as a result of the closures to COVID-19. Are we applying that money towards the shortfall within the general fund, rainy day fund, or no?
Yeah, can I reword it because it sounds a little different than what I intended for you to hear. The city is going to generate a surplus this year. The only question is how much. At the moment, as Commissioner Kelly said before, I've said if all the stars align, it could be a $2 million surplus. This is not related to COVID-19. This is just related to the actions the city has taken this year to cut back on expenditures while having enjoyed certain benefits on the revenue side for such things like the increased property tax and so forth. The increase is less than it would have been because of COVID-19, which has taken probably $500,000 to $1 million out of what we'll receive this year. But even with this shortfall, my anticipation is, again, with the 3 ifs, if the bank goes ahead with the agreement, as I think they will, if we don't get hit by a hurricane, which I don't know, and if we are authorized to defer payment, which I think probably will occur, we're going to have a surplus of 2 to 3 million. The surplus will be applied against the numbers that were provided in the FY18 audit, which was a negative number. So it's going to start to cause it to move in the right direction. My belief is that given the depth or the balance that was provided as a result of the FY18 audit, even with a very positive year this year, it will not be enough to drive that number positive. My guess is, my estimate, I should say, at the moment is that at the end of this fiscal year, it'll still be negative by up to $1 million. Certainly much better than it was at the end of FY18, but not where it should be. So hopefully does that make more sense, hopefully?
Yes. Thank you for clearing that up, Robert. Well, what that tells me is that we don't really have a lot of wiggle room as it relates to our surplus and doing anything for our residents, because the need is ultimately there to build our rainy day fund, to build those unrestricted dollars so that we can have cash on hand in future years to be able to implement projects and solve our problems as they arise.
I don't want you to think of it in absolute terms. I prefer that you think of it in terms of things you'd like to do, assess the benefit of doing that, and then trade that off against what you might need next year. It's not black and white. It's going to be judgmental. Again, if you want to spend $1,000, you're not going to think twice about that. But you certainly want to put some curb on the enthusiasm as to the amount of projects you want to take in response to COVID-19.
Thank you, Robert, for that point of clarity. Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? First, I want to first just shout out Vice Mayor. I think that was very eloquently put in terms of the assessment of our finances. I am of a similar opinion. We are in a rebuilding phase in the city of Opa-locka, and our financial recovery is our #1 challenge as a city. That was the fundamental point in terms of the conversations of dissolving the city, us being in financial oversight, and we need to ensure that we are doing what we need to do to ensure that our reserves and everything is positive and that we're operating based upon the government standards. So I am strongly of the opinion of making sure we're doing, making those, whatever dramatic cuts need to be made to ensure that we get the city back in a positive position financially. So I would hope that pretty soon, based upon the audited report, and I know we're making strides to get our last audit complete to get a very accurate assessment of where we are currently, because those numbers that you reported are from previous years. It doesn't reflect 18, 19 effects on this budget. So I'm hoping that once we get those numbers, we are very clear about what will be necessary to ensure we have a positive fund balance and that we have a respectable budget as a city. So right now, based upon what you said, I know you're about to go into what monies are available. Matter of fact, I'll reserve until you go into that because I want to see what that is about. So I'll reserve my comments until you finish your presentation, Mr. Anathan.
Mayor, that was all I had to offer this time, because again, the funds that are available is going to be a determination as to if you spend them, do you derive enough benefit by spending them now that it's worth spending and not having it available for next year. So again, the funds that are available is only going to be that trade-off between benefit derived now versus preserving it for next year's case the revenue is even worse than we think it's going to be.
So you're saying that the funds that are quote unquote available are basically us deciding what will be the priorities of COVID-19 and how much will be reimbursed by FEMA based upon those priorities that we identify and spend money towards this actual disaster.
That's correct, sir.
I'd like to hear my colleagues' thoughts because right now, I would prefer to be on a very conservative with spending to increase our reserves and funds as much as possible so that there's no question about the fiscal viability of the city of Opa-locka moving forward over these years.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're all pretty much in agreement that we kind of want to do something for our residents in this financial emergency and the whole public health concern. But given where we are financially, I don't know if we can make a large allocation, or maybe we have to look at what we want to do and prioritize what the greatest need is and approach it that way. But it seems to be that we need to look out for our financial future. We had a unmodified opinion, so we definitely want to move to a more favorable opinion if we can in future years. And I think that really looking at those funds and really examining where we are financially and making the best decision as a board would definitely move us to that position and ultimately lead us to financial solvency. So with that, I'll just say as a board, through the leadership of the manager and staff, help us as we deal with these priorities. We need to set something forth, but we definitely need to weigh the fiscal impact of whatever decisions we decide on. Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Kelly?
Okay. Hello?
Yes, Commissioner Kelly.
Okay, thank you. I'm along the same lines as has been mentioned, being conservative, but I am looking at the information expenditures, and there are a couple of to be determined. I don't know what those amounts are going to be. I know we're anticipating they would be, I'm assuming, reimbursable because they're listed under the expense. Would that be a fair assessment to the manager, finance director, that those that are listed on TBD would be all reimbursable? Whatever those amounts are going to be or would be, since they're not giving any amounts now.
Yes, Commissioner, everything on this display is incremental expense and would be submitted to FEMA for reimbursement. TBD only means that as of when that report was put together last week, that information was not available. It's going to be a weekly report. The word went out today to submit updates. A new report will come out over the weekend.
Okay, I'm saying that because, I'm always looking at how we word stuff. And I look, for example, at parks, it says may be COVID-19 related to summer camp, possible virtual activities. When I see words like that, they always give me a concern because it's hard for me to really gauge what that amount may be. When you look at the vehicle usage, TBD, I guess maybe you got some updated data. But that's my concern when I see costs that may be related to COVID-19 and why I asked it the way I did earlier. But yeah, we have to be conservative and we have to spend dollars, or we're going to do it related to this, especially if we don't think we're going to get it reimbursed. But again, I'll wait on the manager to give us his thoughts on how this breakdown relates to going forward on the overall budget as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, Mr. Manager, have there been any, well, could you provide the status of the reports from, I'm pretty sure you've asked the staff to, at each department to lay out potential ideas and things they need to operate their departments more efficiently due to COVID-19 and its new normal, and also potential cuts. What does that look like, and what extra expenditures or savings are we at with that?
So as far as the budgetary financial plan in regards to COVID-19, myself and the budget director are in finalization stages to provide the commission with 3 options in regards to potential savings going into the next budget year. So I'd be premature in kind of providing that information because we're still finalizing numbers, but we have reached out to the various departments to see what their needs are for the upcoming budget year. Any cuts that could potentially be made to save money based on loss of revenue in regards to COVID-19, as well as looking at various other options in regards to doing potential cuts. And so those will be provided to the commission under separate cover, probably in a completely separate workshop other than COVID-19 in the coming weeks. Mr. Anathan, can you give some insight on that? I know we kind of been discussing it for the last week or so. Where are we at as far as providing the commission with options for the next budget year? I know we're going into the budget process. Are we meeting the deadlines based on the budget calendar that was submitted to the commission, and how we're looking moving forward?
The answer is yes, we're on schedule. We are scheduled to make a preliminary presentation to the commission the second week in June, just to kind of make everybody aware of where we think we are and to get guidance as to where the commission would like to see us go above and beyond where we've taken so far.
So what I personally would be looking for is how we're going to adapt to this new norm in every aspect. So what is our workforce is going to be like? Because I'm pretty sure that we can have more people working from home. What is the technology infrastructure to do that? What do we have in terms of electronic permit applications for our building department? What are the upgrades that we need to do, or the certified teachers we need to get to run after school programs and stuff like that? Those things, what are we putting to be a lot more effective with our communications to residents about things, and call centers and things of that nature? Those ideas of how we're going to move this government into this new norm and the 21st century, that's what I want to see, and what it looks like in terms of costs, and how will we be saving on costs? Because if we're doing electronic things, I know that is going to cut down on the many people that we probably need at City Hall. So those are the things that I'm going to be looking for, and I want to see in this report. I'm hoping that it's just a standard budget, that's just a new norm, regular norm. I'm hoping that we really come up with those very clear, innovative thoughts of how we're going to transform this government in response to COVID-19 and the more electronic online version of how we're doing business as a community, as people.
Understood, Mayor. And I would say we clearly understand the expectation. Also, I do want to put the expectation out there. We are still waiting from guidance from Miami-Dade County, as well as the state of Florida, as well as nationally in regards to the direction of new normal as well. And, you know, we're still waiting guidance in regards to even dealing with like recreational activities. Miami-Dade County hasn't released their recommendations in regards to recreational activities and how that's going to look, and as well as other issues that may come up. So that is a very fluid thing. Office operations are very easy to kind of interpret and kind of go over, Mayor. When we're talking about recreational activities and other activities related to the public, we do have to wait for guidance from the experts, as well as Miami-Dade County and our state, in regards to how we're kind of adapting those things as well. No excuse, but I'm just saying, you know, as we went through the parks presentation, a lot of that is depending on if Miami-Dade County is even going to authorize recreation and summer camps this summer. Waiting for guidance to come out in the early part of June. So a lot of these things are kind of fluid as far as how the new normal is looking. But we do understand the expectation, and we will move towards it.
I hope we are leveraging experts and people that can guide us as a city. I know we are not the end all be all in terms of understanding this new norm and the fundings and opportunities. So we can make sure that we are in each department, everyone, your city manager's office, the HR, everyone is leveraging experts who can give us that level of guidance. What we're doing here in the city of Opa-locka is we have to rebuild this government. Simple as that. We're rebuilding this government, transforming it, and this pandemic is also an opportunity because it's challenging governments all across the nation to do something different. So who will lead us in making that happen, and how are we getting that level of guidance here for all of our departments? And I hope we're not just limiting how we're going to move forward just to what we know and what we've always done. So if that's the direction we're going in, then I will sit back and wait to see what comes out.
Excellent. Mr. Mayor, can you check if there's any other questions to COVID-19 budget related questions?
All right. Anything else in regards to our budget?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
I heard the manager mention a separate meeting, separate cover. When does he anticipate that?
The second commission meeting, probably, Robert, are you speaking on presenting at the second commission meeting in June, or you want to do a separate workshop?
I believe the calendar called for a workshop in the second week. I can look very quickly, but I'm almost sure that's what it is.
Okay, so that's what we're looking at, Commissioner.
Second week in what?
Second week next month.
That's when we would have our workshop?
That's what's on the budget calendar at the moment. Yes, sir.
Is that also a commission meeting?
No, sir. It's a workshop.
No, I mean, you said second week. So is that gonna be on Wednesday, Thursday? Because I don't have a calendar in front of me.
Let me check on the calendar very
No,
quick.
the manager can find out. Reason I'm asking, I hope it's not on a commission meeting where we gotta
No.
do a lot of stuff in 1 hour and then rush to the meeting. That's why I'm asking.
No. It'll be on a separate day, Commissioner.
Okay, all right, I'll wait for that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? Relates to budget? All right, Mr. Manager.
Okay, my slide, because I don't have a testing representative here, but I do have the testing numbers broken down. As you see on this slide, is broken down on how many people tested based on week 1 and 2. Week 1, total of 445 people tested, 15 first responders, 8 minors, 12 to 17 years old. Week 2, we're currently in. Sunday, Monday, the sites were closed due to inclement weather. We're looking at a total of 166. Thursday's numbers just came out about 2 hours ago, so the slide is not updated with Thursday's numbers. As of yesterday, we had 166 tested, 2 first responders, and 4 minors aged 12 to 17 years old. We've been doing a huge PR push in regards to kind of getting this done. This testing site and the members of National Guard, even to the point as of today, are trying to band together, schedule a day or some days to go and canvass the neighborhoods within Opa-locka to educate people on testing. Palm cards were produced by our PR firm in order to have handouts and palm cards we produced and handed out. Those were completed this evening, will be delivered to City Hall tomorrow. I will be having Mr. Rice send an email out tomorrow, polling the commission of when they are available next week to kind of assist and do this, because we want to do one day next week where we all go out, band together during the day and try to pass the word in regards to COVID-19 testing. So Mr. Grice will be requested to put out an email to communicate with the commission tomorrow in regards to that. That's the gist of it. And then I'm going to have our PR person, Jessica, kind of give an update of what she's worked on since last week and kind of this PR push that we're trying to do. But do we have any questions specifically on testing before I get into PR and marketing?
Mayor Pilot?
Mr. Bass.
If I recall correctly, I think you requested a breakdown on numbers, wanting to know how many of those persons tested positive are residents of Opa-locka. Do we have the statistics?
So I will talk to the incident commander tomorrow or also statistics. Of course, those numbers come later. They kind of lag because of the test processing time. I know as of yesterday when I spoke to her, we were at about 400 some odd people tested and under 30 tested COVID positive. The issue is we don't know if those Opa-locka residents or just general people that are tested at the site. So I have to see how they do that demographic breakdown. I will tell you more likely than not, it's included in the number roll up that we get on a daily basis. Our budget administrator goes on a site to pull up by zip code the COVID positive cases. Those positive cases that are tested from that site are actually transponded or kind of transcribed into those numbers. So the list kind of coincides with the daily report that we produce on a daily basis to the commission in regards to COVID positive rates. This testing site contributes to those numbers as well. So it kind of coincides. I know you probably want a separate report, like based on this testing site, how many Opa-locka people, residents are considered COVID positive. I have to see if they can break it down to that level of finite numbers, or if we have to depend on the daily reporting that we're already getting.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I definitely will piggyback on Commissioner Bass. Number of residents that have tested positive, and also how many residents and outside folk are being tested at that site, and how many residents have tested positive. Those are very critical. Those palm cards, are they Spanish?
I will tell you most likely they're in English, and I will work with Jessica and see if we can get some in Spanish and Creole as well.
Awesome. All right. Oh yeah, let's make sure we do that. And did I hear correctly that we were going to organize the commission to go out and walk the streets on
Yeah.
a particular day?
Yeah, we want to do an effort. We want to do a PR push where the commission and staff go out into the community, pass out palm cards, knock on doors, and let people know that we have a testing site. That's actually was their idea that came out by the incident commander at the testing site. They want to actually have volunteers that are at the testing site, as well as the members of the National Guard that's out there monitoring the testing site to participate as well. Kay is what we call her. That's her nickname. Kay is really invested. I think Jessica will agree with me. She's very vested in the success of the site. So she wants to make sure that we hit over triple digits on a daily basis. She believes there's an issue with outreach. Part of the onus is on the state and the county, and a lot of it is on us. You got to remember, this testing site is a regional testing site. It's not an Opa-locka focused testing site, but it's going to be our responsibility as City of Opa-locka to make sure the testing site stays here. And we also realize that we are in the rear of the wave of testing, right? We're not in the front line of testing as when the testing began. So I'm sure we would probably have been hitting 200 every day if this was March. But we're going to May and June timeframe where testing is kind of scaled back. And we want to kind of do the outreach. So they want to be vested in the community to make sure that we have more people in the community test, because the site is in a very unique location, where it's in a very diverse location. And it's in the location of need for testing. So they want to kind of push this outreach. And actually that idea was brought up to me today, and I forwarded it to Jessica. We thought it was a wonderful idea. And we said, involve the commission. Maybe the commission want to be involved and go out and educate, just like we do with the food, Feeding South Florida on Tuesdays. Maybe we want to dedicate a day to hit the streets and kind of interact with our residents and kind of push out the word. If that's agreeable to the commission. That was just an idea thrown out there. We'll see, poll you all tomorrow and see where you're all at with that.
I'm down. I love it. And I think it would be nice to have a Opa-locka testing day. We could probably align that with census too, so that while we out there, we talk about census and also testing, and we create a push. And I'm down to do it more often. Once we get the material, yeah, we can definitely organize volunteers to get out there and educate and let people know. So is there any coordination with surrounding cities to get them to let their community know there's a walk-up testing site in the city of Opa-locka that people can take advantage of?
So I will speak to both Kay and Jessica to kind of coordinate and kind of discuss that push, if that is going on, and if we can coordinate that at the same time, make it more of a regional kind of push. Like I said, it's still in its infancy. This idea just was born this morning. So Mayor, it's a possibility to kind of coordinate with our other cities and try to get that push out there as well.
Thank you. Anything else on testing? Anyone else on testing?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
when did he say that the information will be ready, the cards or whatever?
So we have English palm cards now. We would need to order palm cards in Spanish and Creole. But English palm cards are available now and will be delivered to the City Hall tomorrow.
Okay. So the ones, you have a lot, I'm assuming you ordered a lot of them in English already?
Actually, I'll defer to Jessica. Jessica, how many palm cards do we have in English that's being delivered to the City Hall tomorrow?
There should be 2,000 that are going to be delivered tomorrow. On Saturday, 2,000 were distributed, and the Spanish palm card has already been translated and is being revised on the graphic artwork right now.
So the one, I don't know how, is this Spanish on both sides, the same information, or is it different information on both sides, or just one-sided?
The original card had the same information on both sides. And the Spanish card can have one side Spanish and one side English.
So you already have basically 4,000 cards printed.
Yes.
Okay, so what you have in the process now is Spanish being designed or crafted for printing?
Yes, sir.
Since we're talking about cost, and again, it may not cost a lot, I don't know. You've already got 4,000 in English only. If you're crafting the Spanish, is it possible to do that Creole on the other side, or just take all of both sides of the card for the Spanish?
No, sir. It is definitely possible that one side can be English. I'm sorry, one side can be Spanish, and then the other side can be Creole.
I'm just thinking in terms of the cost, since we just finished talking about the budgetary side. You got 4,000 English already. Although it's a challenge, we all know that works sometimes. We're campaigning, trying to make sure who we're giving out cards to. Since you got 4,000, we have 2,000 in the process of Spanish. It would make sense if you go ahead and put Creole on the other side or something that gives you more bang for your buck, since you already have it.
Yes, sir, I agree.
That's a suggestion, Mr. Manager. I don't know what the cost of the cards, so it may be feasible to do them all separate. That's just a suggestion that I'm offering. And again, you would be waiting on, I guess, to get the Spanish or Creole now before you would actually set that walk up or walk out particular date. Is that a fair assessment, Ms.?
That's a fair assessment. I believe Jessica can get these palm cards produced within 24 hours, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Well, as you indicated, we're on the back side, so every day is a day longer. And while I appreciate the mayor, with the regional, and we are regional, and we can obviously reach out to our surrounding cities, we need to push right now on folks to take advantage of the testing while it is kind of light. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm already working, or was already contemplating something with the churches. So I guess I'll speak to the manager, and then we'll deal with that aspect of it, since we're going to do outreach anyway. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add, I'm very passionate about this testing. And I will tell you, in its infancy, in its development, I thought it was very important to get a testing site in Opa-locka, as well as our elected officials. But being involved in this on a daily basis and kind of dealing with the testing site on a daily basis, I've kind of gotten a newfound respect for the process, and knowing, I understood the importance, but really knowing the importance of this. And having 200 tests available on a daily basis and them not being utilized is really painful for me to get. When we hit over 100, the 100 peak on Wednesday, on the 27th, it was a very proud day for that testing site, because they were very discouraged in regards to the testing numbers that were coming in. And the biggest push is to keep the testing site there. And we are going to keep the testing site in Opa-locka. We've invested in the monies and infrastructure and security, as everybody's noticed, in securing the site. And I think, a lot of it's education and kind of reaching out to our younger group and making sure they know it's available. And my thing is, initially we had 120 appointment slots and 80 walk-ups. I mean, at this point, we have unlimited walk-ups. I mean, at this point, because we're not hitting the numbers. And my thing is, I'm telling people, listen, drive up. I mean, literally, you can wake up in the morning and say, I want to be tested, and come to Opa-locka. You could be on the other side of Miami-Dade or even Broward counties, and you can say, I want to be tested. It may not be a walk-up testing site same day, and it's available. It's available. Drive to Opa-locka, get tested. I mean, literally, there's no lines at this point. The wait for testing is like literally minutes. So, like I said, I'm really vested in this PR push, and we're going to get it done, and we're going to make it happen. And the testing sites is really deeply involved in it, as well as the incident commander and the folks from the National Guard. are willing to pitch a hand and kind of get out there and get it done. So like I said, Mr. Grayson will be reaching out to the commission to find a common day, hopefully in the next week, to kind of get this done. Palm cards can be produced within 24 hours. We're gonna get this push done. We gotta push this testing hard. And Jessica knows how passionate I am about this, as well as other areas in marketing and PR that I've been really passionate about over the last week and a half. Jessica has been dealing with me, I think, at least 2 hours a day, if not on an everyday basis, in regards to our various PR struggles that we're kind of having and dealing with going forward. So I have Jessica kind of do her report now, but I think testing is a very pivotal thing that we kind of got to push really hard, really quickly, and to sustain this site and keep it moving forward. Jessica. Unless there's a question about testing.
You have a question, Commissioner Burke?
No, before Jessica does her, Mr. Mayor, to the manager, I'm saddened that it would take a resident to remind us that this is a diverse city. This testing site is very important. And for us to have went about promoting the testing site and just English, I'm sure was an oversight of us. And Mr. Manager, I would like in the future for us all to remember this is a diverse community, and it's not all English speaking residents in the city, and it's not all Blacks in the city. So I would just like for us to keep in mind when we are doing important things like this, this is a diverse community. Thank you.
I do want to make sure we do know that at the press conference, we definitely had almost a balance. I think it was a 4 English station, almost 3 Spanish stations and news outlets there. And I remember in other conversations before, we've also made sure, but I believe Commissioner Bass was very keen on making sure that all of our flyers have art put in all 3 languages. So I do want to reaffirm that as a government, we have been making sure that these things are moving. I think there may have been a oversight with the palm cards initially, but that's probably it. Well, we need to make sure that, I said, and I wholeheartedly believe you, Commissioner Burke, in terms of reaffirming the fact that we need to make sure that we do have that as a part of this conversation. And of course, when a resident brings anything to light, we make sure that it is emphasized and a priority. So that's how we do. That's government. That's everybody. When somebody brings things in, you want to make sure that they get addressed, and that's what we're going to do. And that's what we want to reaffirm. So thank Commissioner Burke for reaffirming that. And that's what we're about here in the city. All right, Ms. Mockins.
Thank you. What has been accomplished since the last time we spoke last week, we were able to complete the marketing plan and come up with a slogan. We are identifying a spokesperson and should have that information on tomorrow. We also put up 4 directional signs on 3 main arteries, 135th Street, 22nd Avenue, and 27th Avenue. Those went up this afternoon. We have another code red message going out this week. Our advertisement on social media garnered close to 1,500 views. And the palm cards were distributed on this past weekend to a number of the restaurants, beauty salons, gas stations in the community. And we also distributed a media alert in regards to the drive-through feedings. And we're only talking about COVID-19, correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Yes, we
so
are.
that would conclude my report on PR and marketing for COVID-19, unless there are any questions.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Any questions, Commissioner Kelly?
did I just hear that we gave out 2,000 cards over this weekend?
Yes.
Is that what I heard?
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious to my colleagues, how many of y'all got cards or seen those cards? Anybody seen those cards? Because I haven't seen one.
Ms. Watkins, can you
Amazed that something
explain how?
2,000 went out and I hadn't even seen one. Didn't get a chance to even look at it. Not so much so I got to prove it, but I'm amazed it went out and haven't, nobody, is any of my colleagues seen those cards? Nobody want to answer? Okay.
No,
Thank you,
that's
Mr. Mayor.
I mean, no one's seen it, Commissioner Kelly. Do you?
I haven't seen it.
I tried to show those cards in all of our meetings this week. I'm not sure if everyone remembers it, but and also the card is on the social media site. It's the card that says that there is a testing center at Shervandi. If you've looked at the Facebook page within the past 10 days, it's the same ad that's running on the city's page.
Okay.
It's just a printout version of it.
I saw the Facebook post. Let me just say this to Mr. Manager. This is Commissioner Kelly. If you're sending out something to 2,000 folks in this city, I'd like to at least know what it is you're sending out. I don't have to approve it, but I'd like to at least know what's going out. Thank you.
All right. So that includes all I'm a little confused, Commissioner Kelly. Could you are you saying the commission or just yourself should approve or review every message that goes out from the city of Opa-locka?
No, I'm not saying that because everybody has their own way of communicating. I don't okay your robocalls, they go out. I'm just saying if something is going out on behalf of the city, that 2,000 cards went out to all over this community, in the business community, I would have liked to receive at least a courtesy call to say, we're putting these out, here's what it looks like. I don't have to prove anything, but as an elected official, I would like that courtesy.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
I don't have to prove the card. I don't have to prove anybody's words they want to go out. She works through the manager. So obviously he approved it. I'm just saying me one, I would just like the courtesy call or courtesy email to say, here's what is being distributed this weekend in the community, reference COVID-19 workshop, testing, site, whatever. That's all I'm saying. Okay, that's good approval for me. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Okay, hold on. I want to be clear. So is that just print media or is that all media that you want to get a courtesy call on?
Pardon me?
Is that include all print media or print notices that go out, or is that all like any type of media? Because
I don't have a problem with whatever the media is going out. She just indicated that she's doing press releases, that things are going out. I don't have a problem. I'm just saying that's already gone out. I didn't see it, didn't know about it. I would just like in the future, especially when it's going out in that kind of bulk to the whole city, I would just like the courtesy to say this is going out on behalf of letting people know that we're testing. That's all.
okay, yeah, I'm confused because I know there have been flyers that have been out for events and I've never seen. So I want to make sure that we are having a straight message to our management about because if he does one thing for one person, man, we got to do it for all of us on this commission so that we're very clear about what's going on. I want to make sure the management knows what it is, because that can get real into the weeds. Does every time the clerk sends something out or post notices that got to go come to us? Does every time if there's a announcement going out for emergencies, that got to come to us? Like, oh, that's the level of clarity I'm kind of confused on, but I'll reserve and let the manager go ahead and address it, because that I'm confused.
So, Mr. Mayor, I will say this. When it comes to this media and whole PR situation, I was very cognizant that there is a level of sensitivity in regards to making sure that the same message went out to all commissioners, that the commission was aware of what's going on, what's being done. Ms. Mockins has met with every commissioner, okay, for the most part, in regards to the marketing plan, how designs look, what we're doing moving forward with COVID-19, what we're doing with the other marketing services that she may be presenting. And I know that the design and what's being put out and what has been put out was addressed. I would say I will address Commissioner Kelly's concern at the end of this meeting and first thing in the morning to ensure that him and Ms. Mockins connect so she can present the marketing plan that she's presented to the other commissioners in regards to the COVID-19 push. I know Mr. Grice was directed to reach out to each commissioner to schedule dedicated time with Ms. Mockins by herself without me present to kind of, number one, develop the business relationship and understand what was being done moving forward. I will apologize if there's an error on the manager's office in regards to communicating a palm card design. And moving forward, if we're doing mass communication, that I will send out a courtesy email to the commission either through the clerk or through Ms. Lawson, or even myself directly, to kind of pursue that. Just for clarification, the 2,000 cards went out to the business community and not the residents. But I do understand Commissioner Kelly's sentiments, and I will work on diligently making sure that is communicated in the format that each one of you all would like for it to be done. But just for clarification, we have met with the most part of all the entire commission in regards to this, and we will attempt to pursue and address Commissioner Kelly's concerns moving forward. That's what I would say, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and I during my meeting with Ms. Mockins, I did see the card and was aware of the card. I didn't get the hard version because we're not doing face-to-face things, face-to-face, I mean, in-person meetings. So I know during those meetings, that's when, yeah, I know I was made aware. All right. Anything else for PR in terms of COVID-19? All right.
No, sir.
Thank you very much. So I do want to just reaffirm the fact, and I'm really happy to see the manager pushing for this testing. This is very, very, very important for our community. And I know it seems as though there's been a downward trend in terms of people really taking this seriously due to the reopening. But we advocated very strongly to get this testing center in the city of Opa-locka, and we need to make sure it is maxed out. So I encourage my colleagues to start to get our volunteers prepped and get our teams together to really hit these streets and let our community know, and really start a PR campaign within each of us to emphasize the importance of testing so that we can make sure this location, which costs quite a bit of money to continue to operate every single day, at no cost to the city in terms of the operation of it stays within the city of Opa-locka. All right, with that, it is going close to 8:07, and we have one last piece that is the mask ordinance in play. Mr. Manager, do you have anything else?
I have nothing on the mask ordinance at all.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to open up discussion next week, Thursday, as a special commission meeting to move forward on this mask ordinance. We've been making, I know I've been pushing quite a bit, and I'm going to push quite a bit personally to get more ideas, some thoughts. I have gotten some calls in regards to varying opinions about the mask ordinance. And I would like to probably even modify this. This is a potential I want to go into, that if this mask ordinance is in place, the social distancing and the curfew may be lifted, because based upon regulations, and CDC guidance, if people are wearing masks, both parties are wearing masks, if everyone's wearing masks, then the likelihood of spreading the virus lessens. So I'm hoping that this mask ordinance can get our businesses back open, get people back to interacting in a safe way by wearing masks. So I wanted to hear my colleagues' thoughts on that, because that's really my intention with this, is to create ability to where we can still operate as a city, as residents, interact with each other, have fun, have our interactions, but making sure that we are masked up while doing those things. So I would love to hear thoughts on that.
Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
thank you. There has been
Commissioner Kelly.
messaging on this.
Commissioner Kelly.
Versus,
Commissioner Kelly.
pardon me?
Your microphone is tripping again.
Pardon me?
So your microphone is having issues again. You have to log back out probably.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, while we're waiting on Commissioner Kelly,
Yes, sir.
as it relates to the mask ordinance and the facial covering law for our city, I'm in support of it, as I chose to co-sponsor the item. My only reservation, which I think I kind of said on the record from the onset, was the timeline. As we know, we can't put dates on ordinances, and I don't know if currently we can even foresee, what, kind of like what's ahead as far as the new normal and how we are to move forward. At the same time, I'm also like you, wearing masks will, stop the spread of this disease. We're a small city with a large number of cases, so we definitely want to be proactive in that sense. So, I also see that side of it as well. If we choose to move the item in a special commission meeting, I would support it. However, I would just like to see some language, I guess, maybe, because I know we talked about like certain laws that we have on our books that come into effect, when we experience, emergency situations or certain scenarios. So I don't know if in those revisions that you're planning going forward, if we can incorporate any of that language, so that that intention is reflected in the ordinance.
Vice Mayor, I asked the attorney to weigh in on this. At the end of the day, this is, to me, is everybody's thoughts coming together. Like, let's figure out how to make this work. Because if it doesn't work for everybody, if it isn't going to be enforced, then no, I won't support it. I will probably pull out myself. So I want to make sure that this is something that is very realistic, that works, and that it's going to address the problem of how COVID-19 is spreading in our community and also hampering how we interact and do business. So that's the whole point of this, is to address those specific issues. So whatever we got to do to make sure we back to business, to make sure we interacting, to make sure we're not spreading the disease, that's what I want to do. And I'm hoping that this is our way to try and make that happen. So however that looks. So Madam Attorney, the Vice Mayor brought up the fact about the timeline of this being implemented. And I was under the understanding that this is specifically for a pandemic where we have, well, how does this ordinance as is written relate to the timing and when it's going to be applied and not applied? If you just answer that question for us.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor, right now it is written for it being effective just during a pandemic. So in this case, there is a phased reopening that the state has approved of Miami-Dade County, and that we're in phase 1 of that phased reopening. And so one of the things that you may want to talk about, and I'll look and see exactly what the language says, but you may want to consider, whether you're going to be at the end of that, whether your pandemic will extend or not pandemic, but your state of emergency will extend beyond that, which I believe the city with the county's coordination can probably do, and maybe some cities that may, especially harder hit cities here in South Florida may choose to do that. So those are some of the considerations that you will want to look at, whether, how long this pandemic will last. But the issue is, and I think your question is, Vice Mayor, is whether it's specific, and I think the mayor he's correct in saying that it is just for a pandemic, emergency situation where you're talking about a contagion. So if that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Also, another point, Mr. Mayor, if it comes down to an enforcement issue, I kind of look at it like this. We got the curfew on the books. There's all type of overtime and other forms of compensation that was associated with that activity. Maybe it'd be worthwhile looking at if residents, if we're not making arrests, similar to the saggy pants ordinance, why do we have it on our books if we aren't going to enforce it? In my opinion, we should prioritize those laws that that are on our books that we feel is more will have more of an effect on our community. Even when you look at the mask ordinance, to me that should be the priority law as opposed to curfew. Because even if we enforce it, we know what road that leads down. It leads to our residents in the county jail, and not being able to social distance, and becoming exposed to the very thing that we're trying to prevent. So I guess, my position would be to consider those things, as we kind of gel through this issue of the facial covering law.
And Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Weeks?
Yes, I am looking at the legislation right now, the proposed legislation, and it does not look as though it's clear as in terms of when this would end. It does address during periods of pandemic-related public health emergencies that threaten life, health, and safety of residents. So I think you all will need to give some discussion to when you think, that will be enough, whenever that is. That's the only issue. That's the biggest issue here, when that ends.
Mm-hmm. True. So that's a good point. So this international pandemic was declared by who? And,
well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Ms. Weeks. If you have the answer to that question.
Yes, it was declared by the federal government, initially. And then from that, states, some states were a little bit faster, but some, Florida, then, you know, which is what we have to listen to here. If it's not barring any federal requirements. Here, Florida has a state of emergency declared. Miami-Dade County, we're under Miami-Dade County. So let's just say if Miami-Dade County was given, which in this case they were, additional time to do things that were different from the rest of the state, and the governor approves it, that then automatically applies to the city of Opa-locka. So there is some opinions that are out there, and I think I would agree to them, that if there were certain things that existed within a jurisdiction that needed to be addressed on an emergency basis, that the city does have the authority to deal with those issues as under a state of emergency. Here, because we don't have, as we discussed before, our own plan, you would do it in coordination with Miami-Dade County, which I'm sure would not be an issue, provided that you know, we can establish that we have a need for a state of an emergency. So I think the city has to at least give some thought to its own benchmarks that it would put in place for, you know, what is it that you all would need to see? Let's just assume that the county allows you to go as long as you want to with your own state of emergency. What would you like to see? Like, would you like to see the number above a, you know, what standard would the city rely upon? Is it a death rate standard? Would it be a standard of, you know, testing? Would it be a standard of, you know, what kind of things do you all want to see as benchmarks? And I think that's going to drive probably your discussion on how long the state of emergency would last.
Thank you. Any thoughts?
Mayor?
Commissioner Kelly?
Let me address that if I heard correctly. One of the things that I mentioned when this ordinance came up was to put some kind of clause in legislation that we will revisit. And what I was told at that time, it would only apply and it would not apply if the pandemic is over. One reason why I asked that question was the very reason that you're mentioning now, because we don't have a cure. There's probably not going to be a cure, but yet we were going to be, well, cities and the state was going to be open back up. And that's why I asked at that time, a few weeks ago at the first reading, what would be our benchmark? Because if there's no cure and they're opening up, you still got to have something. Otherwise, we're just going to be in that loophole probably by ourselves. So I still say, again, we need some kind of benchmark, whether it's, as attorney said, death rate or going down on the curve, what have you, to revisit it, or it just dies out, or some automatic trigger of revisiting the ordinance itself. Having said that, before I got, my mic went bad and had to come back on. I wanted to find out, since you mentioned about the mask ordinance and i.e. curfew and social distancing, what does not the manager, but the chief, because he's out in the front lines with his officers, what does he think would be the effect if we just had the mask ordinance and not had the curfew? Would that suffice, that people would do what they need to do without having to have the curfew in place, given that social distancing is being pushed already? I'd like to have that answer from his opinion as the chief of police.
Chief Dobson?
Mr. Mayor, okay.
I don't think he's, I don't see him by his computer. All right.
Okay, we have two lieutenants that are on here. Lieutenant Sheridan, can you answer that question?
Yes, sir. I think that I think that we can enforce it to a certain extent. It just depends on how the commission wants to push it. As far as PTA, I do agree with that. But it's just how the commission wants to tackle it.
I'm not sure I understand what that means, how we want to push it. You all are the enforcement component along with code enforcement for the mask ordinance.
Right.
If we were to get rid of or do away with our curfew and or, you know, and just have the mask as our major thing, you're saying that you would believe that would be a detriment, and we could do that without any major issues?
I think we can do it without any major issues. I still think that the curfew right now, until we get a hold of it, as far as the numbers, I think that's in. I think that with both of them, it'll work hand in hand with each other. To be honest.
When you say get a hold on it, what do you mean? What benchmarks are you all looking as a department when you say get a hold on it?
Don't say with the numbers increasing, or until we find out what the true numbers are within the community. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so then what you're really recommending is that we would keep the curfew even if we go ahead and pass the mask ordinance.
Yes, I would do them both hand in hand.
Okay. All right. And I didn't hear, maybe it came up, Mr. Mayor, the structure of how it would be enforced in terms of penalties. Is it still 100, 150, max 200? That's still the current proposed legislation?
Yes, you have any changes to that?
Pardon me?
Yes, are you proposing changes?
No, I'm not really proposing changes since the police department appears to feel we still need it. I guess based on what he's saying, they would prefer to see it stay as is until we get a better, well, he says on numbers. I'm not sure how they're measuring that. So I'll leave that to them as professionals since that's what they're suggesting. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I was looking at any other comments or questions?
Mayor Pryor?
Commissioner Bass?
My point of view is, as elected official, we need to do what we believe is at the best interest of safety for our community. Be it the social distances, be it the face covering, be it the curfew, and it's up to our residents to heed or not. But I think for us not to do anything will be a negative look on us as not doing anything at all. So I really do think that we need to basically stay where we are and give the residents another opportunity to do their part, because this is a partnership. We can't do this as commissions by ourselves, Mayor and Commissioner. We just can't. It would never work. Not until prayerfully our residents begin to realize that this is a partnership and we need to do our part as residents. It just simply just won't work. But I don't feel that we should pull back because of lack of cooperation from the residents, because even as parents, if I may, we don't stop scolding our kids or reprimanding our kids because they're not listening. We do our jobs as parents. So we need to do our jobs as elected officials. We have to put it out there. If by any chance is not a heed to, at least we did our best. We did what we felt was best to keep our residents safe from this catastrophe that's actually happening. And like I stated earlier, the numbers are not getting any better. If you all were to go and watch CNN or wherever you get your news from, it's not getting any better. It's estimated to go up another 30,000 within less than a month. It's not getting any better. I think to lax what we've already done is not going in a good direction. We need to stay put and just continue to encourage our residents to take responsibilities for their own actions. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Burke, you have anything?
No, Commissioner Bass said it so well.
Okay.
I concur with Commissioner Bass.
So In regards to the conversation about when this would be ended or reviewed, I'm looking at the emergency orders for Miami-Dade County, and there's a few that address mask wearing. Ordinance number 1720 basically encourages that all essential businesses are encouraged to allow their employees to wear masks. That was passed on April 2nd. And then you have emergency order, this 1920 passed on April 4th. That says that all persons outside their homes are encouraged to wear masks. And then emergency order 2020, which says that persons working and visiting in grocery stores shall wear masks. So what I'm thinking is that when the Miami-Dade County releases order number 1920 within 2 weeks, we as a commission revisit our emergency order of this mask. What do y'all think of that?
Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner Kelly?
That's part of what I said at the first part. That's why the only reason I supported the ordinance because of the penalties, because they have some teeth into it. That's why we didn't just go for the outright letting the manager do the order because of the penalties. I'm still of the opinion that when they release their orders, and the manager can correct me, I'm not sure if our numbers will be going downward. That's why I asked the police department the way I asked them, what do they think about what was going on? This ordinance is going to come up in another, well, not next week, but in 2 weeks. So by that time, if the order from the county is lifted as you're suggesting, then that may tell us all we need to know with that ordinance. So I would just say leave it as is. And if it turns out that that order is lifted, that will change dynamics of what we do, because maybe we've seen the numbers go down, and maybe the police reports will indicate warnings that went down because people are following the mandate. It may not be a need. I think at this point, leave it on the agenda and see where those numbers are, because the manager could give us an updated report or numbers via the police department on what is occurring should the county go ahead and change their order. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
All right, I'm a little confused. So are you saying that we should revisit it based upon our police numbers, or based upon the county releasing order number 1920?
I'm saying we need to, well, via the manager, look at both of them. The ordinance is going to come up in a couple of weeks whenever we have our meeting. But if the manager and the police department have seen a decrease in the warnings where people are doing it, and the order comes in from the county, that will probably, in my opinion, give us a sense that maybe we don't need the ordinance with the enforcement, because people are doing what they should. If not, then you leave it on there, because obviously they have not been following it. We can always be tougher, we just can't be light.
All right, I think you may be confused. So what I'm talking about now, right? Remember, the purpose of this workshop and us having this mask ordinance was to discuss modifications to it, so that when we vote on it next week, we have those modifications ready to amend it, because that's the only time we can amend it, and make sure it's solid. The Vice Mayor Davis, yourself, and also the attorney stated that we should put in refine that language about when it ends, because right now the language in there just basically says it's during a pandemic, and it doesn't clarify who declares that pandemic, who says that pandemic is over. So what I'm looking for is for us to get on some type of page, and what I proposed is that the page in which we get on is that we will, as a commission, if this passed next week, we will put in there that we will revisit this order when the county releases its requirement for all people to wear masks outside of their homes. Well, they didn't require, they just said they encourage. We're going a step further to require it. So when they release that order to encourage people to wear masks, then we will revisit ours within 2 weeks, on whether or not we will release our requirement. So
Well,
I'm wondering,
okay.
is that's okay? You good with that? Anybody else have an issue with that? Okay. All right. So then that would be one of the amendments to this that we will propose next week. And everyone, like, whatever amendments that you have, like, let's just figure this out. So that next week we can just make the motions, vote it up, and get it done. So that's it. The other thing, any other amendments anyone has, they want to clarify, or any staff believe there's something that we need to clarify in this order?
Only on the, Mr. Mayor,
You got it, Commissioner
only
Keller.
on the penalty side, just to be clear with the manager, we don't anticipate any challenges with the enforcement if on the penalty side with the special master in terms of caseload, because I know they're not meeting, and that's a whole other discussion about virtual special master meetings even. So if this passes, how would we get that up and running? Because this is something that obviously another layer of, I want to say, work. How would they be able to do that or add that on? Because I know right now you're not doing any of those special master type hearings. We need to put something in place so it's not. We know it's not mainly going to happen until you open up and do those, or are you going to try to do them virtual? We need to put in language for that, Madam Attorney. That's the question I really have for both of them regarding it, so we can put it in there now if we do.
So as far as the weight or caseload of special master, I think it would increase the caseload. And because the cases, special master cases have been deferred, the previous cases prior to COVID-19, you're gonna see a surge in special master cases that go up, maybe to overwhelming point initially until they're able to stabilize. It's just like many court cases that have been delayed due to COVID-19, and now they're being done virtually or telephonically. So those are challenges that you're going to see. You're going to see those challenges. If there's options for the cases not necessarily to go to special master and for those fines to be paid directly to the city, unless they're disputing those cases, if there's language in the law stating that, then you may have more people that are more successful just to pay the fine rather than go before the special master for a fine to be issued or various different things like that. So I will yield to the attorney in regards to the enforcement portion of it. And if there are provisions in the ordinance for a fine to be paid immediately, or if that has to go through the special master and that process and how that works, that will kind of judge how that caseload will be.
That's actually a really good point. Commissioner Kelly, do you mind if Ms. Weeks answer that? Do you mind if Ms. Weeks answer that question, because you have the floor?
Yeah, she can answer because it'll help all of us.
Madam Attorney?
Yes, sir. As it stands right now, there's just an enforcement section, and the enforcement section simply talks about the punishable by a civil fine of up to $250 to be collected, and then it goes into how that can be done through it will be referred to the city's special master for adjudication. So it's nothing that is due immediately. It will go to the city special master in accordance with those rules, and any person found to be guilty would be subject to the tiered system that you all put in place or expressed in the previous meeting. So right now, I guess you have to decide if your manager thinks that you are not maybe at a level where you'll be able to accommodate these things, because you're also going to have some buildup from, I guess, from your code enforcement and other things that may have been happening. I don't know. Those are the kind of things that you want to think about right now, because maybe you need an additional person, or that person to work additional hours, or multiple code enforcement hearings to be set up so that you can catch up. Those are the kind of logistics that have to be worked out.
Can it,
wait, hold on. Madam Attorney, I think the specific question is whether or not instead of all citations going to be adjudicated through the special magistrate, that there's an option, just like a red light camera, that they can pay it immediately. And if they don't pay it immediately, if they want to contest it, they have an option to go to the special magistrate. Can we do that in this?
There is no option like that, obviously. Now, I would have to research that and see what prohibitions going through a special magistrate process that might be in Florida statutes. I'd have to research and look at the statutes regarding special magistrates and see whether it allows for that or prohibits that. I don't know that off the top of my head right now.
Okay, so I think that's something we would like to know for next meeting, if it is possible to do an immediate citation, and if they do not, they want to contest it, they can go to the special magistrate to do so, and then also have that language prepared for us if it's possible, so that we can read it and we can vote on whether or not we want to amend this at next week's meeting to do so. All right.
Very well.
Commissioner Kelly, you still have the floor.
Yes, to the manager, since this is COVID-19 related, if you had to bring on an additional special mask, whatever, would that be a reimbursable cost? Since you said that caseload would be much heavier since you got all the other things going on?
So I would have to yield and ask Mr. Anathan to do research in regards to that, because right now, reimbursable personnel costs in regards to COVID-19 I want to say, and Bob can tell me if I'm wrong, only covers overtime costs, not regular salary. So we would have to do a little bit more research on that to see if that's covered. Am I correct, Bob?
Sorry, took a moment to find the button. I think the question is, if we have additional magistrates, I mean, the court fees will basically cover those services. So I don't think that FEMA is going to recognize that as a claimable reimbursement if in fact it's generating revenue.
Okay. All right. Well, if the language can be done at with the attorney, I guess she has to research it. Otherwise, I guess we have to leave it as is and just put some kind of language that says we'll revisit it, like we already mentioned earlier, and let it play out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Mr. Manager, why can't the special magistrate meet virtually now?
I don't think we have looked into setting up that process at this point. Like we're now going back to regular office hours and staff. You have to have number one, staff available to work those meetings. It takes coordination. I think we're in a place where we can move forward and kind of coordinating that now, but I think we weren't in a place to do that. You even had suspension of court hearings and various different things. I know that stuff just started being done virtually, caught up. So the whole adjudication process in general was kind of cogged up with this whole COVID-19. I can speak to code enforcement as well as Madam Attorney and see how things are being done virtually in regards to what other cities are doing with their special master kind of moving forward. But I think everything was kind of held up with this whole COVID-19 situation, kind of in the initial point of things. But we can look into it, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's part of this whole new normal plan. Like all these things that can be done virtually. What are those things? And let's move into that. Let's move. And what are the rules and regulations and policies and procedures that are going to govern that? We already have policy and procedure issues that we need to put together. This is the opportunity to, as we refine and relook at our policy and procedures, we update them based upon this new normal operating of our government. And I think that would be probably a lot more helpful, especially for those that are dealing with red light camera issues, if they can virtually come in to contest their red light camera or whatever. I think that those things are important. So I would like us to figure that out as soon as possible. Like, what parts of our government can go virtual? What does that look like? What is the investment we need to make that happen? So any other thoughts on this mask ordinance? All right. So the last thing we kind of briefly brought up that I do want to dive into, if this mask ordinance goes into law, what do y'all feel about releasing a curfew? Because we put in place the curfew to stop the spread. That was the main purpose of doing it, is to stop the spread. So if now we're the only city that has a mask ordinance that is making sure that people are out no matter what, they're covering their faces, do we even still need a curfew if they're going out with their masks? And as I was sitting here, I was really thinking about it, because now it kind of pulls it back. So now people won't be criminalized or going to jail or hit with the, I think it's a 500 notice to, is it a notice to appear or go to jail if they are caught outside of between 10 and 5. Now it's, you get $100 if you don't got your mask on. So I'm thinking about that balance and how that looks. Right? So I would love to hear my colleagues' thoughts on that, because if this goes into effect, I probably want to revisit that.
Mr. Mayor, may I say something?
Yes, Mr. Manager.
I still think there's an issue with the police department and enforcement with the curfew. I think there's issues with enforcement. I think the numbers are skewed. I think further research needs to be done. And I wouldn't recommend releasing that curfew immediately. Now, gradually, as the mask ordinance is in effect and education is done, the city, it starts distributing masks. Remember, we got 36,000 masks with a portion to distribute. I think once we start the distribution, get the education done through the police department, through court enforcement, make sure the police department has masks to issue while they're on the street, to provide people masks and stuff like that. I think as we gradually get into that and people get used to it, then I think we could release the curfew, but I don't think you should do it simultaneously.
That makes sense. Anyone else?
Mayor Praggett?
Commissioner Bass?
I totally agree with our city manager. If it happens that we have to, I think in a stagnant fashion will be better than just going cut dry. Thank you.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes sense. Anyone else? All right. So is there anything else in relation to COVID-19?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Davis?
Yes. So I just wanted to bring up the point of the meeting, the virtual town hall that I, Commissioner Bass, and I think we're all in agreement with doing. I know that the manager and our PR consultant proffered some sort of walking education / PR outing on behalf of the commission. So, you know, I just kind of want to, I guess, throw that out there and have us revisit it. If you want to, you know, nail down a date or kind of coordinate that with the with whatever outreach we're doing, or just kind of coordinate around those, you know, those dates. just kind of want to get the commission's input before we close out.
Thoughts? Vice Mayor, I agree with that. We could probably promote workshops as a town hall. Like, there's nothing stopping us from making that happen.
Is there any way, I guess, through the mayor to the manager and probably IT that we can make it more, I guess, interactive? Because I wouldn't want to create a new forum, if we already have existing platforms to engage our residents, such as commission meetings and the like. I know we made provisions for our residents to provide input via public comment, but we're all under, observation that, we've also seen public comment decline over, over the course of going virtual. So, I'd love to hear the commission's input if we want to kind of do that, reiterate the fact that we are hosting, weekly forums. I know we meet a lot, so I, for one, wouldn't want to create another meeting just for the sake of meeting, but also, want to extend that opportunity to our community and allow them to, provide feedback, especially as we're going through our changes and crafting a new normal and restructuring our city operations. So I would want to do that and, not ultimately have the input of our residents. So I'll be open. I mean, if anybody has any suggestions on, how we can make our currently existing forums a bit more interactive, I'll be open to it.
So, Mr. Manager and IT, is there a platform that can get some feedback from somebody? All right. So if there is a platform, an ability, I think Zoom webinar, I think can do that, but I don't know if there's something that may be better. Can we figure that out? And also, Madam Attorney, think about what would be the rules and regulations on how that works. Will it operate in the same format as public comment, our regular meetings? How do we choose people to speak and state their address? Like, yeah, can we, I guess, figure that out and get some type of report back to us at the next Thursday, so we'll be very clear on how we can?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not clear on what you're asking me. Are you asking me what could be some options? What is it? I mean, can you restate your question, please?
So the Vice Mayor brought up a point that we've talked about in terms of how do we get more engagement during these meetings. But the Vice Mayor brought it under the fact of us doing a town hall, a virtual town hall, which is similar to what we're doing during these commission meetings and workshops. So right now, we've kind of just jumped into this Zoom platform on these meetings because that was the immediate need and we needed to meet. But on what Vice Mayor and I know many of my colleagues is, what is the technology platform we can utilize to create more engagement for our residents, to get their voices heard and to talk to them, number one, and then two, what would be the regulations that would govern that? Because it will be a little different. Like, how will we manage people speaking in line and in order, and the timing and all that? So that's the kind of thinking that I don't think we should do right now.
Right,
but
but I just want to, excuse me, I just want to make sure that that's not really a question for me. That's your tech people. You can use Zoom to do it. You can use, there are different kind of platforms that are out there. Obviously the state's recommendation is that you, to the extent that you're going to allow public participation, you're going in the opposite direction of any concern that anybody would have, because if your issue is we want to open it up more, and nobody is going to challenge that. So your tech folks are going to have to determine what that looks like, you know, and basically anything is going to be, almost anything is going to be acceptable. You just have to determine, you know, if it's beyond after every item, or you're going to let people come in. But Nelson is in a good position to know. He has some ideas about that. And certainly if you're going to make it more expansive than what you already have right now, nobody is going to tell you that you're out of compliance legally. So that's really a tech question. And I just didn't want, you know, forgive me for interrupting, but I just didn't want you to, you know, have that as something that was on my plate, because I don't know what all of the platforms are available and what technology Nelson has that he can tell you all about.
So what I was specifically asking when asking about the manager in IT, so the manager in IT would identify the actual platform and what that looks like. Who creates or proposes how we should utilize that platform and lay out those rules and regulations. Like at the beginning of every meeting, there's you state the protocols for how this meeting runs based upon the emergency orders.
Right.
So I know within our city, like we're doing, this is something new. Like this is a new space that we're moving into. So we're trying to identify, and we were asking, and my commission can correct me if I'm wrong, we're asking if we put in place that new platform that can bring people in, we need to be able to clearly tell the residents, this is how it's going to be managed. And we want to know, and this is y'all can talk about this. It's not something I want to really get into right now at all.
Right.
I just would like to hold on, Mr. I would like to have y'all just figure that out, and then next week you just come to us and let us know. Like that's it. So the clerk can get involved. I'm calling upon the city manager, city clerk, and city attorney's office to help us figure out what that looks like so that we can engage more of our residents in a town hall manner. Am I off to my colleagues in that thought? Okay.
So Mr. Mayor.
All right, Mr. Manager.
So I can make this very simple. City attorney doesn't need to be involved in the process.
Right.
You can stream Zoom on Facebook Live, and people can ask questions on Facebook Live, and those questions can be answered. Or we can have a moderator that have set questions that are put in advance in regards to various subjects. So there's a lot of different rules and protocols we put in place, but the attorney doesn't need to be involved in that part. As long as we're meeting sunshine and it's advertised properly and various different things like that, that's the legal part. I think myself and the clerk and IT can come up with a platform. And the clerk's gonna probably beat me up for saying, doing that, but we can figure it out.
Whatever works. So let's just come out next week and we'll figure it out. So y'all propose ideas. I'm sure my colleagues may send ideas to y'all. I will send ideas to y'all, and next week we'll take care of it. Anything else?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
is this the virtual town hall the vice mayor is referencing hearing, is it related just specifically to the curfew?
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to answer?
Yes, sir.
It's actually related to a few things. As you know, we're also going through our census cycles. So census was definitely a point of concern that I, definitely wanted to reach out to residents and explain to them the importance of it, as well as the timeline for submission. We saw our numbers doing pretty well. I know I've been monitoring closely, as probably many of you. So we saw a decline. So definitely wanted to, participate in some sort of outreach so that we can get those numbers back up. So the census, COVID-19 testing has been an issue. The fact that reopening of city businesses is now being considered, and kind of where we are, maybe we're a bit premature on those, and the face mask ordinance. So maybe those items don't have to be included, but definitely loitering laws, the curfew law, like those are all things that I kind of wanted to bring up in the meeting, as well as where we are as far as the flooding emergency, and just how we all could all work better together to make this city great. So that was my intent of the that was my intent.
I just wanted a clarity, so it's really about a broad range of subjects.
Yeah, so basically you just wanted a platform that we can do that. So these workshops can suffice, and I actually was gonna, and that's the one was gonna be my last point, because I heard a conversation, I think I mentioned the manager say he couldn't bring something up in this meeting because it's a COVID workshop. So alongside implementing this engagement, we can release this stop to where it's only COVID-19 and start to bring in other ideas and use this as a platform when we have workshops to engage the residents on various items, because there are a lot of things we need to get feedback on, we need to engage, and we need to share with our residents. And we can't let this COVID-19 stop us from doing so. So, and I know even Commissioner Burke talked about that because he wanted to get back into the regular meetings. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Burke, your comment at the last meeting, before the last meeting, was in regards to making sure that we get back to the regular meetings so that we can get engagement. So yeah, we're trying to, I guess, get all those birds with one stone, but we got to actually have a platform in place and start to really continue to do the business of this government.
Okay, that's a lot of birds, but okay, I'll say that works out. That's too many birds in my opinion, but that's, I understand the intent. I like the intent, but that's a lot of birds and a lot of information. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Anything else? All right. So again, I want to thank everyone for continuing to be with us as we do these weekly workshops. This is a pandemic and it's going to be long. So thanks staff for taking the time to really be with us on these weekly basis as we deal with this as a commission, so that we can continue to review the latest data, make these tough decisions and move forward. So without further ado, it is 9 o'clock on the dot. It's time to go to sleep, be with our families and eat. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, move by Commissioner Kelly, second by Vice Mayor Davis. Commissioner Burke was a little late. Y'all have a good night, y'all.
Somebody else time. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Take care.